Let's go live. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. We've got the pre-show that is just getting started. I was just checking the visuals on my side. Everything's looking really good. We're going to start the live stream in about 10 minutes. So if you are watching live, hang in there. This is the pre-show where I'm checking to make sure that everything's working. This is, some people sent me notes saying, why are you starting the stream before you're starting? Well, this is the part where you just get to see behind the scenes, I guess. This is how I feel better about going live. And if you are watching this in the replay, you can jump ahead 10 minutes and you can skip all of this, which is mostly me just talking. Let's check a couple of things. Those will work. Let's check this camera view. It does work. Let's check this camera view. It does work too. All right. I'm pretty happy with both of those. How do I get myself off of that? That's how I do it. And then we do it again on that one. How about that? Okay. It's all working. Oh boy. We've got Security Plus today. For those of you joining us, it's the Security Plus study group. We've got emails and other things going out in the next few minutes. We've got everything kind of ready to go here. I tried to make sure that everything would be ready to go by the time you got here. It's getting a little smoother. Oh, good. You just got your email. Those usually go out 11:55. It would be unusual. Oh, you got the email from YouTube is what you got. Yes, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you're automatically informed whenever this goes live. You don't even have to wait around for me to send you an email. It just shows up automatically, and neither of us has to think about it. Thanks for being here, chat room. I'll be taking questions there from the chat room as well. If you're on YouTube, you'll notice there's no chat there. There's the live event chat that is at professormesser.com/live. That's the chat room that I'm watching. Oh, you were watching, well, good timing. You were watching a Security Plus video when you got the message about the live Security Plus study group. That worked great. That's fantastic. See how that all works together? There's Bob from accounting. Good morning. It's been a very busy week. We are shooting videos constantly. We are putting together, I'm editing. I was editing all morning. I shot videos yesterday. I shot videos the day before. I'm on the videos that I'm doing right now are command line videos. Okay, you're doing command line security tools videos. See, it's all working together. I'm on the command line videos on the A+ side right now, shooting those videos. And it turns out to be, I don't know, a 20-minute video, but it takes an hour to set it up and an hour to shoot. So these 20-minute videos are actually, to shoot it is 2 hours. To create it before that was probably half a day. And then I have to edit. I edit some this morning. That takes an hour at least to edit forever. It's almost a real-time thing. If it takes an hour to shoot, it probably takes about an hour to edit. Probably a little bit less, but that's basically it. It's kind of how it works out. Garland, Texas is here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Hello, South Africa is here again. Thank you for being here. London is checking in. I'm hoping that for my time frame, it's 12 noon. It's right in the middle of the day. And the goal with that was so that I could maybe get people on the West Coast of the United States who wanted to watch, and people maybe east of me. It would also be a relatively reasonable time to watch. I know it gets worse and worse as we go farther to the east. So I appreciate all of you tuning in from Nigeria, from South Africa, from London, and from other places there in Europe and Africa. That's fantastic. Thank you. And Georgia is here. Georgia. I'm practically in Georgia. I'm about 20, 30 miles from the Georgia line is where this studio is. So it works out okay. Very nice. Sam and Dave are here from Alexandria. Really? It's that's a duo. Although they don't have their show anymore, do they? So there you go. Maybe it's not a duo. Romania is here. Croatia is checking in. UT is here. I'm assuming Utah and South Carolina made it. Welcome. Fayetteville, Georgia is here. Welcome. Or Fayetteville, North Carolina. Fayetteville, Georgia is a different place. I have been to both. So we got a lot. Stafford, Virginia. That's close enough to DC, right? You might as well just call that DC. We know it's DC. We need to get some air conditioning going in here. So let's turn on some AC. Scotland. Hello, Scotland. I need to get back there horribly. I was just talking to the Mrs. Professor Messer about doing that very thing. So we got to work on that. It's our next set of trips. Because I'm thirsty. We've got Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale down there where Mrs. Professor Messer is from. She was born in Miami, raised in Hialeah. So we lived there. We lived in South Florida for 10 years. So the whole Fort Lauderdale, I lived in both Dade and Broward County. Now it's not Dade County anymore. Ireland, welcome. Puerto Rico, hello, hello. Haven't been back. I need to get back to Puerto Rico as well. Haven't been there in a while. Baltimore is here. Welcome. Got to get this mic just right. Because once you get it there, it's there. But you can hear it making noise as I'm moving it around. It's a new mic, so it's a little stiff on this. You don't want to loosen it up too much because you don't want it going away in the middle of everything. You don't want the mic leaving you. Netherlands is here. Welcome. Kennesaw, just north of Atlanta. Welcome. Good to have you here. Well, if you're at Best Buy and you're a Microsoft expert, I'm calling you an IT person. So you qualify. That's the way it works. So you can't say you've never worked IT. That's about as IT as it gets right there. Ray is here from Maryland. Michigan Upper Peninsula is here. This is all Security Plus today, by the way. We'll get started in about, I'm not even sure. I don't have a clock here that counts this down. It would be a good thing to have a countdown clock. None of these things are right. What I need to do is put one up on the screen, like right here, so you can see, here's the countdown clock on my screen, but I don't have one. All I have is I wonder if I could do that. I've got a new switcher. This is a new switcher that's in front of me. I've had it now for about a month. I wonder if I'm able to do something like that. Be able to make that. How useful is learning Windows PowerShell? Well, if you're managing Windows, it's pretty darn useful. I would recommend you get very familiar with it. It will save you lots of time. Jennifer's here from Northern Virginia. I think so. I think Atlantic City is here. Another place I need to get back to. New York. Don. Hey, Don from New York is here. Hey, Don, how you doing? See, Florida's more Florida people. I'm in Florida. So that works out. I've never left Florida. I've been all over Florida, lived all over Florida, but never lived outside of Florida. Traveled quite a bit for business outside of Florida. So that's here. Yes, Fort Bragg, being Department of Defense, primarily requires a minimum of Security Plus. That's correct. That is one of those. There are other things that are compatible, other certifications that you could also get in lieu of Security Plus. But Department of Defense, at a bare minimum of the things that you need, that is probably the most prominent of the bare minimums. So it's a good one to have. Security Plus gives you that foundation of talking the language of security, which it is a different language when you're working with security folks. It's interesting. You learn all that with your networking. You learn all your A+ and the operating system details, and then you get into security, and suddenly they're talking about the IPS and the two-factor authentication and needing to set up the IPsec tunnel, and you're wondering, where do all these new terms come from? Pool UK, welcome UK. Eli's here from Texas. Yeah, the first question of every live stream is a performance-based question, Madison, so thank you for asking. Stick around. That first question, you'll be able to get it, and you can go back to all of the archives for the last year, and the very first question's a performance-based question. You can check the YouTube comments for links that will take you right to the question. The entire study group is completely time-stamped for you, so you'll be able to know. immediately. Let's see if I can get this up and running. We'll have to be doing a study group here shortly. In about a minute? No. How about right now? It's time for the study group, everybody. Let's get things going. See if I can get the entire study group away. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2019 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group from the World Headquarters here in Messer Studios. Thank you for joining us. If you're here live, thank you for joining us live. We usually turn the cameras on about 10 minutes before, and we can chat with the people here in the chat room, talk to them about what they're doing and some of the things going on. We've got other things that we will be doing today that focus on Security Plus, primarily focused on trying to get you more familiar with the topics on the exam. That's really the most important thing of what we're doing. This first hour is all live Q&A, and you will be answering the questions live on the internet. I'll tell you in a moment how you're able to make that happen. If you are watching this live on the YouTube side, you'll notice there's no chat room. I was talking earlier about talking to the chat room. Where's this chat room? Because normally it would be on YouTube, but instead you can find it at professormesser.com/live. And that way I can get questions from you as well during the chat room. The second hour, once our Q&A is over, I open up the phone lines and we can talk about any question you would like. So for the folks asking in the chat room, is this a chat? Is it a study group? What's going on? That's what you need to know. And I'll put the live stream video in the chat room so that everybody who may have stumbled across this can find the live stream as well. We're able to do this monthly study group thanks to you. Thanks for watching every single one of my videos. My Security Plus training course, by the way, is free to watch online. You are able to watch every minute of every video, all online for free. There's nothing behind the scenes. There's no paywall. There's no registration you have to do. There's no questions or things you have to answer. There's no money you have to pay. They're just out there for you to watch. Now, we can only do this thanks to folks like you who are on the internet and watching these. There's also an offline version that you can buy. That offline version has all of the videos that you can copy to your mobile device. It has MP3 files so you can listen in when you're traveling. And it comes with my course notes as well. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/getsecplus. Today, we're going to focus on Security Plus. And some of you already know, if you're following me, the way you keep track of me and the way you can even communicate directly with me is going to professormesser.com/Twitter to be able to join my Twitter stream. And of course, professormesser.com/YouTube. Remember, on YouTube, if you subscribe and click that bell whenever I go live, you'll get a notification. Some of the folks in the chat room were telling me they knew immediately when I went live. Normally, there's also an email I can send out. You can sign up for that email list on my website as well at professormesser.com. There's also not only a video replay of this that's available immediately afterwards in most cases. Once I hit the stop button, YouTube takes a while to process it, a few minutes, and then it's available for you to watch. So I don't even have to upload anything. You're able to watch the replay when it's there. There's also an audio-only version of this available in podcast form. You can find that at professormesser.com/podcast. It's also podcasts available for my A+ study groups, my Network Plus study group, as well as the Security Plus study group. So if you want to have the audio automatically downloaded to your mobile device, so it's just there waiting for you, you go to the gym, you hit your podcast app, and the audio is already there. You can simply hit play. Find that all at professormesser.com/podcast. I mentioned in the pre-show that every single timestamp of this study group is available. I think you can go back about a year now and get timestamps for this, thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who has to sit through this whole thing after it's over. And she listens to all of it and makes a note of every timestamp that's in here for the questions that I'm asking, for the calls that come through. So if you're looking to go back a couple of months and you're trying to find a particular question or a particular call, you can usually find it there. It's in the YouTube comments. Simply open up the list of the YouTube comments and you'll be able to see all the timestamps. Thanks for Lori for doing that. We wouldn't be able to do that without her help. Let's go through what we're learning today. We're going to talk about Security Plus. We've got plenty to talk about Security Plus. The current version of the Security Plus exam is SY0501. Make sure that you know that the latest version of Security Plus is SY0501, and make sure that all of your study materials also say SY0501. This 5.0.1 version was released in October of 2017. So it is a version that's been out for a little bit of time now, but the older versions of books, I'll still see them out there from time to time. Don't get caught looking at some of those older versions. What you're going to find is that the difference between an older version and this version are pretty dramatic. So if you study from other materials, you walk into the exam, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. Fortunately, it's a single exam. You don't have to take more than that single exam. It's 90 questions, and it could be a maximum of 90 questions. It could be fewer than 90 questions, and it's 90 minutes. So you have to really watch the clock when you're on this exam. Whenever your time management on this exam, pretty important. Make sure you watch that. The passing score is a 750 on a scale between 100 and 900. Yeah, I don't understand either, but that's the scale and that's the score. Just do the best you can. There's no way to determine how well you're doing in the middle of the exam anyway. So that's how they'll know if you actually passed on that particular exam. It's a mixture of different questions. Some people will show up after the exam saying, I was expecting the multiple choice questions, but I was not ready for the performance-based questions. And that's something we're going to talk about in depth in just a moment, and how important it is to be ready for those performance-based questions. I'm going to ask you questions today, and you're going to answer. If you're watching this live online right now, you can answer as well. So you can do that by opening up a new browser window and going to professormesser.com/QA. You also can download an app from your favorite app store. And this app you're looking for is the Socrative student app. That's the one you want. It will ask you for a room name. The room name, and I've listed this on professormesser.com/live as well. The room name is Professor Messer. Not a shocker there. Make sure you spell it right, though. PROFESSORMESSER. So you spell those right, or you pop open the browser, go into professormesser.com/QA. You don't have to worry about the room name. It takes you right into the right room. You can't miss it. In fact, there's a question waiting for you right there. A number of you have already answered. And I call this my study group rewind question because this is from last month. This is a question to see if you can remember what we did, how well it worked, and make sure that you can go in there and get to the question. The question asks, which of these activities should be categorized as passive reconnaissance? Which of these activities would be categorized as passive reconnaissance? Would it be, I guess it would be good if I got the list ready for you to see on the screen. Here we go. The options are reading online forums, scanning for open ports, running DNS queries, running ping sweeps, or performing OS fingerprinting. Which one of those would be categorized as passive reconnaissance? And I get to see live in real time as you're typing these things in. We can see exactly what you think the answers are. You can see 72% of you so far have said reading online forums. 15% said scanning for open ports. 9% said running ping sweeps. 6% said running DNS queries. And 2% said performing OS fingerprinting. On the exam, you'll have the option to choose one of those when you're getting the multiple choice questions. Make sure you go through and have a look at those as they are coming in. The real question that I'm going to be asking you today will be a mixture. We'll do some multiple choice. We'll do some that are kind of a fill in the blank, if you will. So I'm trying to mix in kind of the style of the actual exam with this. This one is asking about passive reconnaissance. And if you go through the passive reconnaissance, especially what we talked about last week, this is where we're trying to learn as much as we can without actually sending information in and getting information from a device over the network. Because if you're transmitting any type of information to a device, it will be logged. If you send anything into a device, there is a log of it somewhere. And it's from a firewall, from an IPS, from a stream to disk solution. Some organizations will capture every packet and store that data for a certain amount of time. They just have a massive drive array and they're storing every packet that comes in. That's a real thing. That really does happen. So anytime you make anything on the network that causes some type of data to be sent across, it turns out to be an active reconnaissance, which means scanning for open ports, running DNS queries, running ping sweeps, or performing OS fingerprinting, all sending information over the network, all would be active scanning, active reconnaissance. So the real question here is, what's the answer? It's A, reading online forums. Now, as we go through this today, please don't answer in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're sitting down for the exam. Make sure you go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to see this and answer the question yourself online. And then everybody will be able to see how we did. So that's the way to do it right there. Make sure you go through all those. See, it would be good for any of those pieces. Let's now that we are in here, everybody's able to see the questions. We're able to see what's going on. We're going to jump ahead to the first question of the month and see how we do with this. As I mentioned earlier, when you first sit down for your exam, the first series of questions, probably about a handful of questions, it could be plus or minus 4 or 5 of them, are going to be performance-based questions. And as I mentioned, if you're not ready for this on your exam, suddenly you're being hit with these very involved, relatively complex scenarios that you have to now answer. And it can throw you a bit, especially if you think, is this entire exam going to be these involved questions with multiple questions and multiple answers associated with them? Fortunately, it's just a handful. So don't be thrown by that. What I like to do in my study group is give you one of these performance-based questions right out of the gate, so you can at least get a feel for the style of what you might get. We're limited as to the type of question I can give you online, but I want to give you something where you do get somehow a little bit of the flavor of a performance-based question. One of the things that we're going to go through is the first question we'll do today is performance-based. One of the recommendations I do is to actually skip over these. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's give you the question first. This is a matching question. The performance-based question might be a fill in the blank. It might be a matching. It might be a drag and drop. It could be a number of different types of questions. This one is a matching question. So this should help a little bit. The question is for you to match the technology. I'll make this so you can type these in, and I've got letters and numbers associated with each of these. We want to match the technology. Let me give you all 6 of these technologies, and then I'll give you all 6 of the names. I'll give you the description and then the name of the technology. So the first one is, one character changes and the resulting hash is very different. Which technology is that? The second one is, the encrypted data is drastically different than the plain text. What technology is that? The third one is, a different key is used for decryption than encryption. What technology is that? The fourth one is, different inputs create the same hash. The fifth one is, decryption keys are transmitted across the network. And the sixth one is, make the source code difficult to read. So maybe those of you listening on the podcast side, on the audio side, maybe in your mind you already know what some of these might be, but let me give you the list that's here, since this is a matching question. And the list is asymmetric, in-band, collision, confusion, obfuscation, and diffusion. Those are the 6 technologies, people in the chat room. I don't know if they're really happy about this, but that's what they are. Remember to not put answers in the chat room. You want to go down to professormesser.com/QA. This is a one-to-one for those of you asking. So there's your hint. It's a matching. You're going to match 1-to-1. I gave you 6 different descriptions and 6 different technologies, and it's absolutely a 1-to-1 for those. This is one, by the way, remember, don't put answers in the chat room, and please don't put any hints in the chat room. But these are all technologies you should know. Let me quickly go through them again, and then we'll talk about strategies. The first one is, one character changes and the resulting hash is very different. The second is, the encrypted data is drastically different than the plain text. The third one is, a different key is used for decryption than encryption. The fourth is that different inputs create the same hash. The fifth is, decryption keys are transmitted across the network. And the sixth is, make source code difficult to read. And you're right. In the chat room, this one's a little hard, especially because these terms sound very similar. Those terms are asymmetric, in-band, collision, confusion, obfuscation, and diffusion. All of these are actual technologies on the exam. This is what I mentioned earlier, that we sometimes have to go through and figure out these details. You don't have to type these in. You can see I've numbered and lettered them. If you think they're already matched, the answer would be 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and 6F. They are not. So you don't have to type a lot in. You just have to match them up on here. Hopefully that will help you with your typing and trying to get this. This is a fill-in-the-blank question. I mentioned strategy earlier. Whenever I first sit down for the exam, I'm a very nervous test taker. It's hard for me to start reading and comprehending what I'm reading on the screen. It's that situation. You read a sentence and you realize you don't know what you just read and you have to read the sentence again. That's me. There's a lot of stress involved with test taking. So I tend to, these performance-based questions are very, they're very wordy and they're expecting a lot from me. So I skip over them. The CompTIA exams allow you to skip to any question at any time during the exam. You could go to the very last question and work your way backwards if you wanted to. Not all manufacturers do this on their exams. Cisco, for instance, presents you with a question. You have to answer that question, and when you submit that answer, you can't go back later on. You're taken to the next question. So it's very linear in how Cisco does this. CompTIA, though, very different. So I tend to skip it. I go through the multiple choice, which I'm more comfortable with, and the multiple choice tends to jog my memory about things that ultimately I happen to see in the performance-based questions. So there's a few things there to be able to think about from a strategy perspective. Let's see the answers to this performance-based question. Let's step through each one of these and start at the very top. The first one is, one character changes and the resulting hash is very different. If you're hashing something, this is a very important part of hashing. You want to change a single character, but have a dramatically different hash appear when you hash that. That way people are not able to take information and try to reverse engineer the hash very easily. That would be diffusion. That is the term used whenever one single character changes the results so dramatically. That's F, diffusion. The second one is the encrypted data is drastically different than the plain text. Another important characteristic of cryptography is that if you're encrypting data, it better be really different than what you started with. That's the whole point of encryption. After all, that's confusion. It's very confusing to look at the resulting information. It doesn't look anything like what you started with. That's why we call it confusion. That was answer D, confusion. The third one is a different key is used for decryption than encryption. I hope a number of you got this one right. That's asymmetric encryption. If you used exactly the same key for both encryption and decryption, that would be symmetric type of encryption. Asymmetric is a different animal altogether. Without asymmetric encryption, we wouldn't be able to do very much on the internet at all. The fourth technology description is different inputs create the same hash. Different inputs create the same hash. And if you're looking at this and wondering, that doesn't sound good, because as we've already mentioned, we want hashing to be dramatically different when we start putting things in. We should never get a case where different inputs are creating the same hash. We have found instances with certain hashing algorithms where there were collisions, where there were different inputs, and yet they had exactly the same hash associated with them. That shouldn't happen. Collision is a good term to use there. Not only do we have this situation where it's the same thing and suddenly two things are stuck in the same place, it's very bad to have a collision. You can think of collision set. That's a bad name. Well, this is a bad thing to have as well. Decryption keys are transmitted across the network. If you're doing that, you're sending this information in band. If it's something that you would like to send away from the network, it would be out of band. We always think of the person carrying the briefcase that has the handcuff to the briefcase so that you know it's going to get to that final place. It's never left their hand. They're delivering the encryption key. That's an out-of-band communication. And finally, make the source code difficult to read. There's only one answer left. Something difficult to read would be obfuscated. So obfuscation is making things difficult to read, especially source code. That's a very common use of this is to make source code difficult to read. Doesn't change the source code in its operation, just makes it harder for human beings to understand what's going on with the source code. Hopefully you're familiar with those. So quickly, let's review. One character changes, the resulting hash is very different. That's diffusion. The encrypted data is drastically different than the plain text. That's confusion. A different key is used for decryption than encryption. That's asymmetric. Different inputs create the same hash. That's collision. Decryption keys are transmitted across the network. That's in-band. And making the source code difficult to read is obfuscation. So those are the things you should know. All of those technologies are in the CompTIA exam objectives. You should know all of them, be familiar with them. They are a core component. Most of these are core components to cryptography. So that's useful there as well. Hopefully you did well on those. So let's now shift gears a bit and do some multiple choice questions. So this is very similar to the exam. We finished our performance-based question. Now let's do a multiple choice. And here's your first multiple choice question of the day. And it asks, which of the following would be the most responsible for data accuracy, privacy, and security, associating sensitivity labels to data, and ensuring compliance with any applicable laws and standards? This is not an easy one. People in the chat room are already upset with me. Let's look at this question again. It's a very long question. In fact, it's very similar to the type of wording and style you would get on the actual exam. This big run-on sentence. It's a single run-on sentence. So the question is, which of the following would be the most responsible for data accuracy, privacy, and security, associating sensitivity labels to data, and ensuring compliance with any applicable laws and standards? Your possible answers are privacy officer, data owner, system administrator, data custodian, and data steward. This is one you kind of have to parse out. You kind of have to read this one through a couple of times to figure out these pieces. This is a person, obviously, a privacy officer, a data owner, system administrator, a data custodian, or a data steward. So which one of those would be most responsible for data accuracy, privacy, and security, associating sensitivity labels to data, and ensuring compliance with any applicable laws and standards? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please don't answer in the chat room, and don't put any hints in there either. It's right there at the bottom. Is professormesser.com/QA right there. Hopefully you can parse through those possible answers and see what those are. You may be able to even look at these and think, okay, maybe we can figure out from these what it happens to be. The responsibility of all of these things, responsibility all the way through from one end to the other, especially with data, are things you should know about for the Security Plus exam. So make sure you're familiar with those. Make sure you've got all that there and available. So that'd be important. Some folks in the chat room thinking, yes, we kind of have to use the method here to take out things we know or not. That process of elimination, the calculatus eliminatus, is going to help you on this one to be able to step through each one of those things. Let's see how we did with this one. We're going to click the How Do We Do button. We're not sure. None of us know what this one is. I try to get 50% of you getting this one right, getting any question right on the study group. But on this one, it's almost a four-way tie between A, B, C, and D. So we got 27% said data owner, 25% said privacy officer, 21% said data custodian, 19% said system administrator, and a paltry 8%, single digits, said data steward. Well, this is one we have to know for our exam. It's clearly written in the SY01 exam objectives. This is one where whenever you have any type of data in an environment, you have to know who's responsible for it at every step along the way. And so this is a very broad description of what some of these responsibilities are. In other organizations, the responsibilities may shift a little bit, but I think these different roles are pretty well documented. The data owner often is a senior officer of the company. It's probably someone who is not even that technical. They may not even be in the IT department. But it's, for instance, the vice president of sales would be the person who is the data owner of their customer data, especially for someone who's doing sales type work. You know, they're collecting so much different information. The treasurer of the company or the CFO of the company is the data owner of the financial data that's in the accounting system. So that's one that if you're looking for data owner, it doesn't sound like our description, which was somebody responsible for the data accuracy, for the data privacy, for the data security, determining the labels associated with the data, complying with laws. That doesn't sound like the data owner, so we can take them out of the mix. The other one was data steward. Hey, look, the data steward happens to be responsible for the data accuracy, the data privacy, the data security. They associate sensitivity labels to the data and ensure compliance with any applicable laws and standards. That sounds exactly what we were getting from our question. And in fact, 8% of you said data steward. E was the right answer, and nobody chose that one. Or 8% of you chose that one. I know it doesn't sound like a real job, does it? It doesn't sound like something people would do. What do you do for a living? I'm a data steward. Does that mean you work in a restaurant? No? How does this work? You're in the airline industry? No. You drive cars? No. Not sure, but that's what it is. That's what that is, a data steward. For someone doing that, the data custodian manages access rights to the data. If there are security controls that need to be implemented, this data custodian is usually doing that. This often can be the same person as the data steward, but it doesn't have to be. So hopefully that's one as you're going through this. Oh, and the last one, the privacy officer. Privacy officer is something you should know as well. Privacy officer is responsible, of course, for the organization's data privacy. If there are policies, procedures, how people get access to the data, how those things are working through these things, it's the privacy officer. So that's where we're going with these. So this is one, as we're going through this and really looking at all of these different pieces, the data steward doesn't deal with any of the setting up access rights. The data steward commonly is not sitting in Active Directory and assigning groups and determining what folders get access to what rights in Active Directory. The data steward is a little bit higher level than that, especially if you're someone who's responsible for making sure this is complying with the law. You know, you're really at a higher level within the organization. You're not somebody down the trenches making sure the server is still up and running and assigning rights and permissions. And that's really the best reason here that data steward be the right answer, because this asks which of the following would be most responsible for this. So make sure you're familiar with that. These questions will ask you for the best possible answer, for the most applicable answer. And this is a good example of the type of question you would see in an exam that really does ask for the most applicable one. Data steward in this case, answer E is the right one. And if the 8% of you chose that one, I failed you on this question. I was trying to get you one that half of you would know the answer to. But the good part of this is if any of these things come up on the exam dealing with the roles of data, which, by the way, is a new topic on the SY0501 that you won't find on earlier Security Plus exams. This is something now in your mind you'll know, oh, okay, there's a data owner, there's a data steward. You know, you can step through these 4 different roles and know that the data custodian and the data steward and the privacy officer and the data owner and what they do. A pretty important one to have all of those pieces there. Let's see if we can shift gears and see if we can get the next one spot on. Here is our next multiple choice question of the day that asks, which of the following would best describe data in use? Which of the following would best describe data in use? The possible answers are: a switch forwards a frame to a router. A point-of-sale terminal encrypts a credit card number. Customer information is transmitted across an IPsec tunnel. Encrypted data is stored in a SQL database. And lastly, a laptop drive is configured for whole disk encryption. So this question is really asking you about a very specific technical term, especially when it deals with IT security. Which one of these best describe data in use? So hopefully this is one you're familiar with. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and answer the question. Let's see how we do with this one. Those 5 answers again, we're looking for which of the following would best describe data in use. Is it a switch forwards a frame to a router? A point-of-sale terminal encrypts a credit card number? Customer information is transmitted across an IPsec tunnel. Encrypted data is stored in a SQL database, or a laptop drive is configured for whole disk encryption. This one is probably an important question to consider a very specific definition. And in fact, a lot of people think very broadly about some of these security definitions, but things like data in use has a very specific use, a very specific definition, a terminology. And that's why whenever we talk about these things in security, we have to parse them out very, very carefully. This is another one where you really do have to parse this out very, very carefully to see how we do with data in use. A number of you have answered this one. A lot of you are angry with me about these questions. These are good questions, though. These come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. What I've tried to do is give you a flavor, by the way, of what you would get on the exam. You'll notice the question didn't say, what's the definition of data in use? And then it gave you the definition. So if you're somebody who's practicing your terminology on cards, and you're flipping it over and saying your flashcard is giving you the name and the answer, you'll notice this doesn't help you very much. You have to know how to apply this technology in the world of IT security. That's the type of question and answer you're going to get on your Security Plus exam for this. Let's see how we did. How do we do? Let's click the button, everybody. We're a little mixed. I like the answers we had here, though. We have 41% of you said a customer information is transmitted across an IPsec tunnel. 33% of you said a point-of-sale terminal encrypts a credit card number. We have a tie for third. 12 and 11% say a switch forwards a frame to a router and encrypted data is stored in a SQL database. And 3% of you said a laptop drive is configured for whole disk encryption. That's what we need to know. So people in the chat room are now suddenly realizing the results of their answers. Oh, data in use, as opposed to other types of data, like data at rest and data in transit. So yes, you are correct. Those are the ways you should have been thinking on this particular exam, because all of those have a very specific way that we describe data, and it categorizes them very carefully. Data in use generally means this data is in memory and we are actively doing calculations on this data. We are actively doing something with that data. You notice in computers, you don't actually do anything with data until it's in memory. You can't do anything with the data on disk. You can't do anything with the data on the network. You have to bring it into the memory of a system to be able to manipulate it. You could, of course, then save it back out to the disk or save it back out over the network. But this is one where we're asking very specifically about data in use. This means that if it's in memory and it's in use, then this has to be data that's probably decrypted. We have to be able to read it to be able to use it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it after all. This is why when the bad guys are trying to attack a system, they're trying to get information from a system. This is a very juicy spot because everything is being decrypted and it's in the clear once it gets up to the application. And if you can grab that data at that point, you can circumvent all of the encryption processes that are everywhere else. You can circumvent IPsec tunnels. You can circumvent asymmetric encryption, because at this point, everything is there in the memory of your system. One of the best examples of this, probably because of its scope, was in November of 2013. There have been other attacks like this, by the way, through the years. The Home Depot had a similar problem with the problem like this, and it continues. Subway had an issue with these where they attacked all of the point-of-sale terminals, because these point-of-sale terminals are running an operating system. They're running Windows. They're running Linux. They're running something that we're very familiar with. They just happen to have this odd display and keyboard connected to them, if you want to think of it that way. That's one of the best ways to do it. So make sure you go through that and figure out those details. This is also where they attacked Target, is you would slide your card. At the time, we're still sliding our cards. You slide your card. It goes into the point-of-sale terminal. They put malware on every single point-of-sale terminal in Target. Most of the point-of-sale terminals in Target. That was the place to go. So make sure that you go through this and also understand how they got this data. Because they were on the point of sale terminal, they were able to look at the data after it was decrypted, before it was encrypted. That was the great place to go for all of these. Make sure that you go through this list as well and understand the difference between data in use, data at rest, data in transit. Let's see if we can figure this out, in fact. We know now 32% of you said a point of sale terminal encrypts a credit card number. That is the exact definition of data in use. So what are these others that we ran into? Let's look at these other examples. We have a switch forwards a frame to a router. That's data in transit. Yes, the frame is going through a switch. The router's looking at the data in the frame, but that's not data in use as we define it in the world of IT security. So we know that that's really the situation we're dealing with. Customer information is transmitted across an IPsec tunnel. It's almost exactly the same scenario as A, where a switch was forwarding a frame to a router. That's data in transit. So make sure you categorize these as well. For this is turning into a performance-based question, isn't it? We'll go through each one of these. We'll figure out, is it data in use? Is it data in transit? Is it data at rest? And in fact, D is data at rest, where encrypted data is stored in a SQL database. Well, the SQL database, that makes sense. We're storing it on a drive in a file. That's what a SQL database is, after all. That's data at rest. And a laptop drive is configured for whole disk encryption. That would also be data at rest, because that's your disk where we're storing the data. So the answer, the only one here that does describe, not best describe, but only one that does describe data in use, is B, a point of sale terminal encrypts a credit card number. If you answered B, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. So there you go. That was the situation. You do have to know the differences between all three of those. Make sure you become very familiar with those, that you understand what you're looking for whenever you're looking at any of these different data in use, data in transit, or data at rest. It helps to know what all three of those are. And in fact, we talk about them a lot in the industry when we're talking about firewalls and IPS and the ability to track or see what's happening at the ingress and egress of the network. It's terms we use all the time in the industry. Make sure you're familiar with those. Let's have a look at, before we get the next question, by the way, the definitions of data in use, data at rest, data in motion are all listed in all of my videos. And as you're going through my videos, I highly recommend that you take notes. Now, as you're probably familiar, there's over 100 Security Plus videos that you would need to watch to take all of those notes. Some of them have pretty intricate drawings and designs that I've created, some charts, some graphics. They're all in there. And what I wanted to do was give you a single file, a single PDF that would encapsulate all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the tables, everything from my videos into one document. And what I came up with was my Security Plus course notes. So if you want to learn about everything about cloud computing, the different states of data, the different roles of data in your organizations, risk management, mobile security, the tools, the encryptions, the hashing, all of those things, they are all in these course notes. I put everything in there. In fact, I've got the course notes up. We could look at them right here. Here they are. It's a PDF file. That's I've got here on my screen, a big index. This is like 94, 95 pages long. It's huge. And it goes video by video. So you can very quickly jump to exactly what you're looking for in the course notes, find the information that you're trying to find, and go through all of this. It's available for you to download immediately, and it's only $20. Every penny of this goes back to keeping the entire website running. So this is something that you can do to help really contribute to the site, but I like to give you something in return. So it's a little more than a contribution. There's also a physical version of the course notes. It's identical to the digital version. It's exactly the same content. There's nothing new in here, but it is a perfect bound book, very similar to any softback book you would find. It's full color. Let me find something that's actually in color. Would help if you saw colors in here, but it's full color book. And it's nice, high quality paper. I wouldn't give you anything else. It's a little more to purchase this because you have to print it and I have to ship it to you. But if you do purchase this, you get the digital version for free. So that's the trade-off. You can do either one of those. All of these are available on my website. You can learn all about it at professormesser.com/securitycn. It's one of the best places you could go to learn all of the things you need to know. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace Q&A. It doesn't replace hands-on, but it's a great summary. So if you're looking for something to summarize everything before you walk into the exam, this is a great tool to use. Thanks for your support. This helps keep the lights on. So I want to thank everybody for your ongoing support of this set of course notes and all the other course notes that we provide as well. Let's get more Q&A done. We've got plenty to go through. We got time. Here's the next question on the list. The question asks, an attacker has determined that they can intentionally overwrite an area of memory to perform an exploit. Which of these would best describe this exploitation method? Is it A, man in the middle? Is it B, data injection? Is it C, cross-site request forgery? Is it D, buffer overflow? Or is it E, driver manipulation? All of these are actual exploitations. All of these are attack types that you need to know for your Security Plus exam. So let's go through this question one more time. Is it an attacker has determined that they can intentionally overwrite an area of memory to perform an exploit? Which of these would best describe this exploitation method? Is it man in the middle, data injection, cross-site request forgery, buffer overflow, or driver manipulation? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can get those answers in there as well. This is one hopefully you'll be able to break through, figure out which one those is. Maybe you need to get rid of some of the answers that are there. Again, get rid of the ones you know are wrong, stick with the ones that might be right, and at least maximize your chances. An important consideration for the exam also as well, because you want to answer every question on the exam. Do not leave a question blank. We don't know a lot about the way CompTIA goes through these exams and grades them, but we do know from what we're able to know so far that you really want to be able to answer all of them because you don't seem to be penalized for a wrong answer. They don't take points away from you if you get it wrong. They only give you points if you get it right. So it doesn't hurt. It costs you nothing to guess. So if it's a multiple choice question, just guess. Put something there. Put A for everything you don't know, or just take a guess at what you think it might be or your best possible answer. Great way to do it as well. Let's see if we know what you answered on this one for those pieces. An attacker has determined that they can intentionally override an area of memory to perform an exploit. Which of these would best describe this exploitation method? Well, 62%. Is that our first majority of the day? 62% have said buffer overflow. 28% of you, though, well over a quarter of you, said data injection. 9% of you said driver manipulation. 1% said cross-site request forgery. And 0% said man in the middle. Wouldn't it be funny if it was man in the middle? It's not man in the middle. Don't worry. The 0% of you were not correct in this particular case. So in this case, we're trying to override an area of memory, and we're trying to really shove some data in there that can cause an exploit. That is a definition of a buffer overflow. You are trying to fit more data than what was expected into an area of memory. The way you prevent this is you have the programmers write the code so that people can't do this. There's nothing you can do a lot of on the network side other than look for known examples of a buffer overflow and perhaps stop them with your intrusion prevention device. This is a very complex exploit. It takes a long time to find this particular issue. You're trying to find a situation where the developers have not done the proper bounds checking to prevent one of these things. And it's something that sometimes can be repeatable, but not always. It's not a foolproof way to exploit a system, but if you can find a way to make it repeatable, it becomes a very, very powerful exploit because you're able to now run code anytime you'd like to be able to do that. I have an example of buffer overflow in my video where there's an empty area in this particular A and B are the variables listed here. And one of the things that people will do is write information into A and it spills over into B. And that's a pretty good example of how a buffer overflow can cause problems on a network. If you want to see more about this or a longer explanation, it's from my SY01 section 1.2, my video called Buffer Overflows. So if we go back and look, indeed, man in the middle was not the right answer. So you didn't get it wrong. You got the folks did get it right were the 62% of you. They got buffer overflow. Well done. That is the right answer. It would not be data injection. Data injection is usually when traffic is going from one site to the other, data gets put into the traffic flow. In this particular case, this was intentional that somebody was trying to overwrite an area of memory with way too much data. That is outside the scope of what a data injection tends to be. And then we have driver manipulation. In this example, nobody's manipulating a driver. A driver, of course, is that piece of software that sits between the hardware of your computer and the operating system so that your operating system can control the hardware. In this particular case, we're not talking about any drivers, and drivers weren't mentioned anywhere in the question. So having manipulation of the driver usually means that somebody has changed the driver to provide more access than they really should have. That's why if you ever notice when you're installing a driver into Windows, Windows requires additional rights and permissions. You sometimes will need administrator access to install a driver because the operating system knows if somebody puts a bad driver on your system, that's a big exploit. That's a significant problem. In this case, it would not be driver manipulation. It would also not be cross-site request forgery. There's none of this web front end and cross-site request forgeries going on in this particular case. And 1% of you said man in the middle. It's not man in the middle. That's where someone unknown to either people in the conversation is able to gather information in the middle of the conversation, perhaps look into it or change it and then send it on its way. In this case, we're trying to overwrite areas of memory as part of the exploit. So it would not be man in the middle. If you answered D, buffer overflow, you got that one absolutely right for this one. Let's get another multiple choice question into our list of questions. Here comes another one for you. Let's see if we can do just as well on this one. The question asks, a security administrator would like to limit internal users from directly communicating to external websites. Which of these security technologies would be the best choice for this objective? Would the answer be firewall, IPS, proxy, load balancer, or VPN concentrator? This is one where we really have to read the question to really know what the answer is. The question asks, a security administrator would like to limit internal users from directly communicating to external websites. Which of these security technologies would be the best choice for this objective? Would it be firewall, IPS, proxy, load balancer, or VPN concentrator? Let's see if we happen to know what this happens to be. This is one that you should know. There's, of course, every single one of the answers here are actual security technologies. All of them have different advantages and disadvantages or things that they excel at other than others might have. So make sure as you're stepping through this, you know what the primary focus of that particular technology is, especially as we go through. Now, could we make an argument that perhaps two or more of these could be correct? You could make an argument. You would be wrong, but you could make an argument because this is a very specific question. In fact, I'd probably side with you that yes, there could be two answers. Could there be three? There could be three. Could we do four? I could do four. I could do almost five of them. I could say that all five of them technically could mostly answer what this question's talking about, but that wasn't the question. Let's see if you are familiar with what this question is really, really asking. This is technologies, by the way, that you do have to be familiar with because you're going to run into all five of these technologies at some point throughout your career. So let's see how we did with this one. A number of you have answered, so let's see how you've answered. Let's click the How Do We Do button. Well, we're a little torn. We kind of got two here that we chose. 54% of us chose proxy. 40% of us chose firewall. And then it's all single digits at that point. 3% said VPN concentrator, 2% said IPS, 1% said load balancer. And technically, I could probably configure on different versions of these products, all five of them could potentially limit internal users from directly communicating to external websites. However, The wording of this question was very, very specific. So let's break down what the question asked. A security administrator would like to limit internal users from directly communicating to external websites. So already we know whenever we're reading this, we're like, oh, we're trying to stop people from surfing. We're trying to limit what sites people can go to. We're actually trying to limit people from directly communicating to particular websites. And that is going to change the entire scope of this particular question. So how can we limit internal users from directly communicating to external websites? In fact, it doesn't even say block. It just says we don't want to connect directly to these. Now, the challenge you have with that terminology is it still applies to two different pieces of these. In fact, there are many firewalls these days that have the ability to allow people to communicate to external websites indirectly. But the one thing we're looking for is the one that would be the best choice. And this is a common term used in the CompTIA exams. Which one of these is the best answer? Which one of these would you do first? Which one of these is the best choice? And the one product in all of these 5 different technologies, the single technology that all it does all day, every day, is limit people's ability to directly communicate to another device. That's what a proxy does. It's in the name of the product. A proxy is something that makes the request on our behalf. So in this example, I say to the proxy, I would like to surf this on Google. The proxy says, well, you're not allowed to talk to Google directly. I am. Hold on a moment. Hello, Google. Here's a request I got. Please give me the answer. Google provides the answer to the proxy. The proxy looks at the answer, make sure there's nothing bad. There's no malware in there. There's no odd malicious JavaScript. There's nothing in there that you should not be receiving. It takes that information and then sends it on to you. That's what a proxy does all day, every day. And the best possible answer here is C, proxy. Are there firewalls that are able to act as a proxy? Yes, there are. Is that what a firewall is? Not necessarily. It certainly will not be the best possible answer because not all firewalls do that. In fact, proxy technology in general is sort of an older style security technology. A lot of people have thrown out their proxies and get this, have put in firewalls. They've gone from an indirect communication and realized they could just talk directly to these sites, but instead put the security in line in the normal form of communication. In fact, it's a much more reliable form of communication. They're not able to limit what people are able to do. And in the case of our next generation and current generation, what they're even calling 5G firewalls, you're able to do this with much higher levels of security. So the answer here, proxy, is the right answer. In fact, the most common one that really describes this particular question is a forward proxy. It's one that is internal in your organization. The proxy I just described to you of somebody talking to Google is this one here, where the user talks to the proxy talks out to Google, Google replies back, and then the proxy makes sure that's okay for the user and sends it down to them. That is a forward proxy, an internal proxy. That is the one that best describes the answer to this particular question. If you're watching this study group and you would like to get a 1-hour certified email from me, a digitally signed email from me that says you must have watched this for continuing education credit, I would be glad to send that to you over an email. Here is the process you must follow to be able to earn the CEU. If you do not follow this process, you don't earn the CEU. What you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. It's really Contact Me. That's where this is coming from. This is all being sent to my inbox. And in there will be a subject line. In that subject line, it would help me very much if you could put that this is the April 2019 Security Plus Study Group. And even if you wanted to put the special code word in that subject line, that would be super awesome as well for me. The subject line we're looking for, that special code word we're looking for, is forward proxy. Our special code word of the month is forward proxy. Please also, it asks for your name. Please put your name. Also, it asks for your email. That's important if I'm going to email you back. Make sure that's correct. And then there's also a spot in there you can put anything else you'd like. If you want to put a note, a message, anything else, or you just want to put forward proxy in there, that's fine. If you want to keep this simple, you send me something, I send you something back. If you want to put more in there, I read every single one of these that comes through. I'm not able to respond in detail to every one of these other than to send you the continuing education unit credit, but I do read through all of them, especially your recommendations, your ideas, your suggestions. And sometimes if I'm able to respond back, I'll of course respond back to those as well. But that should get you a continuing education credit if you're one of those people that collect CEUs. Not all of us do that, but some of you do. So going back to what we answered, 54% of you said proxy. That was the right answer. If you answered C, absolutely correct. 40% of you answered firewall. And as I mentioned, not technically correct, although these days we're throwing out our proxies. We're doing everything in the firewall these days. Our firewall is our IPS. Our firewall is our URL filtering. Our firewall handles site-to-site VPN. It handles client-based VPN. It identifies unknown malware. It does SSL decryption. It's remarkable what we're able to do these days with firewalls. Indeed, if this said next generation firewall, we'd have to probably give you half credit or full credit, depending on which one you chose. But when we say firewall these days, it does not necessarily mean a next generation firewall. It can mean pfSense. It can mean a port-based firewall, which provides no ability to filter anything at an application level. So those are still out there, unfortunately. So the firewalls that we have in our home that we use as our cable modems or wireless routers in our home, those are firewalls. They aren't proxies. So it's a good example of how if you want to do it by numbers, the vast majority of firewalls that are installed in the world are port-based firewalls. That's all they are, how they do that. So there you go. There's a little bit of trivia for the, we got a little bit of time though. We got some time. So let's do another question before we run out of time at the top of the hour. This one is going to get us back to specifics. So let's see how we do with this next question. Simple question that asks, which of these describes TPM functionality? Which of these describes TPM functionality? Is it hardware root of trust? Is it EMI prevention? Is it reverse proxy? Is it EAL4? Or is it application blacklisting? Do we know what that is? Do we know what any of these things are? Hopefully, people in the chat room are like, wait a second, what's a TPM? Well, we already got problems. We're already got issues associated with these. This is an important part. I mentioned that it doesn't help if you know what the acronym is. A lot of you spend a lot of time memorizing the acronym versus the name. On the exam, that's not going to help you very much. You will instead get a question like this that asks you about this acronym, but it wants to know how you apply this acronym in real life. So make sure you're familiar with any of these. Please no answering in the chat room, and please don't put any type of hints in the chat room. We instead want to go through this question and answer which of these best describes TPM functionality. Is it hardware root of trust? Is it EMI prevention? Is it reverse proxy? Is it EAL4? Or is it application blacklisting? And if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That would be the best way to answer this particular question. Let's see how we do with this one. This is one that can be useful whenever you're trying to break these things down. Let's see if I can fix a number of things on my computer so I can show you the answers. There we go. Which of these best describes TPM functionality? And good point. Mina in the chat room says, I have no idea. I'm guessing blindly. That is the right way to handle this answer, by the way. And it's the right way to handle this answer on the exam as well, because this is where you want to be able to take the best possible guess you can, and you may be able to get free points out of it, which helps as well. Let's see how we did on this particular answer. Which best described TPM functionality? 75% said hardware root of trust. 13% said application blacklisting. We've got single digits, 7% EMI prevention, and 3% apiece said reverse proxy and EAL4. Okay, let's figure out this TPM. TPM is a trusted platform module. Trusted platform module, it's usually part of the hardware on a computer. It's part of the motherboard itself. So that's what we want to deal with. This security that we have on our motherboards is important. Imagine doing BitLocker, where we have full disk encryption. Where do we store the key for BitLocker if we are encrypting the entire drive? Where do we store any keys in our computer in a secure way? We have the same problem, by the way, on our mobile phones that have all of this important data on our phone, but yet we're able to somehow use our unlock codes to get into our phone, and all of our data is now not decrypted to us. How does that work? Well, it works using hardware. And on the PC side, it works using your trusted platform module. And when we say that it's the root of trust, it's because first it's hardware, and it's exceptionally difficult to be able to gain access to what's in that hardware. It's hard. You can't work around the hardware. It's designed to be a secure chip that's on your motherboard, that nobody can access the data unless you happen to know the special code that gets you into that. You have to remember your passwords to be able to do that. And it does not require external storage. It does not require USB. In fact, it's relatively insecure to use an external USB key to gain access to your system using BitLocker. It's not recommended by Microsoft. Microsoft says do not use that. You should be using a TPM because it's much more secure for BitLocker to have just a TPM. And in fact, if you have a machine that doesn't have a TPM, your only option is to use an external USB key, which is horrible for security. Don't use an external USB key. Just don't use external USB keys for anything important ever. Is pretty much what you should think about. If it's temporary storage or something where you're sending to somebody, of course use a USB key. But from a security perspective, that's not what you should be doing, to have that there. So if we look at this, we call that the hardware root of trust. That is what everybody trusts ultimately on that piece of hardware, is your trusted platform module. It's in the name itself. 75% of you that answered A did get that one absolutely correct. That is your trusted platform module, your hardware root of trust. All of this information, by the way, comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. People will come into my chat room all the time and they say, I took the exam and I got a lot of questions I was not ready for. They asked me about topics I had never heard of before, like TPM. I said, well, TPM, that's in the exam objectives. And they say, what are exam objectives? That's what a disappointment that was. Like, you didn't know that CompTIA gives you a list of everything you would ever need to know on this exam. And they stay very, very close to this list. And that if you knew everything that was listed in these exam objectives, you would do just fine on the exam. And they said, no, I've never heard of it. Except I say it every week, every month on the study group. It's in all of my video introductions. Make sure you get these exam objectives. Go to Google and type in CompTIA exam objectives. Get the objectives for the SY0501, or go to professormesser.com/objectives. I'll redirect you right over to CompTIA, where you can download those exam objectives. They are incredibly important. People in chat room asking, where do I get these? Can someone provide a link? Yes, professormesser.com/objectives. You type in professormesser.com/objectives. That will take you to the exam objectives. Get your hands on these objectives. They are powerful. They are so useful to have. Make sure you're familiar with the exam objectives. Well, we do one of these study groups every month. Thanks for being here for this one. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. You can ask Security Plus questions, IT questions, or anything else you would like in there. I don't know if I'll answer everything, but you can ask anything you'd like. The next study group is in May, on May the 22nd. Please stop back by for our Security Plus study group. Of course, we've got another set of study groups. The 7th and the 9th is the A Plus study groups. The 15th is Network Plus, and the 22nd is Security Plus. There's always something going on, and you can find all of those at professormesser.com/calendar. That's a good way to be able to find out when the next event is going to be, especially if you're watching this and this is after May the 22nd. That means nothing I've ever told you in that entire section means anything to you other than that link, professormesser.com/calendar. Well, stick around for the next hour. We got plenty to go through. Don't forget about the important links you need to know to get my course notes. You can learn about those at professormesser.com/securitycn. Make sure you subscribe over on the YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media thing. You'll probably find me there. /Twitter, /Facebook, /Instagram. You'll probably find something there too. I want to thank you for being here in this first hour. We've got plenty more to talk about in the second hour. Stick around. We'll open up the phone lines. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Let's see if I can get the phone lines going as well. Let's get this off the screen. Bear with me just a moment, everybody, and I will get those phone lines running. I have to call into the phone lines, just like you have to call into the phone lines, but I have to do it first. So let me get my Skype up and running, which is how I call in to my phone lines. Let me get the phone lines up and running on this site. It's all in the cloud. Everything's in the cloud, including you calling in. You can also ask questions in the chat room. So if you're someone who you don't like to call, or you don't call, people are like, what is this call function you're talking about on this mobile phone? I don't understand what I would do. You use that to talk to people. It's not just for texting. Who knew? You can do that too. I'm going to start this show up so that you can do that call in. Let me call in, and in a moment, I will give you everything you need to know to be able to call into these as well. Let me start that phone call, and it's going to ask me a few questions on here.
Thank you for.
Well, you're welcome. I'm going to type in right here the things that I need to type in, and it will say,
enter your 6-digit.
And then I will type in this number with the audio turned off so you don't DTMF encode it.
You are now in the host room.
Decode it.
Your call.
There we go. Well, thank you. I'm now able to take your phone calls, and I do that by you calling 855-785-RJ45. That's the phone number anywhere in the continental United States. You can call in and ask questions directly, get stuck right in the queue. If you're calling from outside of the continental U.S., you can also call for free using Skype. Skype doesn't require any Skype minutes to call an 800 number, a toll-free number like this one. And this is a toll-free number. You put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in as well. Yes, you can leave the Socrative app. Our interactive QA part of what we were doing today is now over, sadly. There's a lot of time that goes into creating those particular questions and answers every month, so I'm happy to do that. It takes about half a day to put all of the content together for one single study group. So I'm glad we were able to get all of that put in there, and try to get as many as I could through there today. But we got plenty for you next month, so you can always do that. Let's go to the phone calls. We'll take our first set of calls, then we'll step back to the chat room. But we will start with the 610 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Marcus House.
Hey, Mark. What can we do for you today?
So I'm going to read my question because I wrote it down to keep it prepared. My question is, why is asymmetric more secure? I understand that in symmetric, if a third party gains access to the single key, you have to discard that and get a new key. However, in asymmetric, if a third party gains access to the private key, that is used to decrypt the data, you still have to discard the key and start over with a new private public key set. So why then would asymmetric be more secure?
You are spot on with your key management, Mark. You are exactly correct as to what you do if somebody gains access to the decryption key for this data. If it's symmetric, you have to throw out the key. If it's asymmetric, not only do you have to throw out the key, you have to create a new key pair and then redistribute your public key to everyone else, and then tell everybody, by the way, the old public key, that's now can't use that anymore. You have to use this new public key. The answer as to why asymmetric would be better in this situation is because of how the keys are used. Let's take a single symmetric key situation. I want to send you, Mark, some encrypted data. So this is a symmetric key encryption that we're going to do. I'm going to encrypt the data with symmetric key. Now, how do I get the symmetric key to you? Do I send it in an email? That's a bad idea. Somebody could grab it from the email. Do I now send it? Do I put it into an envelope in a paper form and send it through the mail? That's a good way to do it. That's how I should get. That's a horrible way to send a key. Just wait a couple days and you'll be able to decrypt this information I'm sending to you. Now, even worse, do you give the same key to everybody who's sending you this information, or do you have to manage separate individual symmetric keys? Like you have an enormous key ring that you're carrying around, like you're a custodian in charge of a mall, and you've got this enormous key ring that you have to keep up with and manage all of those. That's probably not the most economical, easy, efficient way of handling encryption either. And that's why asymmetric was so awesome, because you could put a public key out to the world. You could effectively give everybody your key. Here's my public key, everybody. And you have this one single private key that is much easier to keep private because you never give it to anybody. You don't send it to anybody in an email. You don't give it to anybody through the mail. You never share it. It never gets out of your sight. It's an extremely private key for someone to get their hands on, which is why from a key management perspective, it's so much easier to manage an asymmetric key than symmetric. Are there disadvantages with having to build the key? Is there CPU cycles and more cryptography involved with asymmetric? Yes, there is. But your benefit there on the key management side is that you're the only one who ever gets to see the private key. So ostensibly, you have a much safer private key than you would using symmetric key encryption. Now, are there situations where asymmetric keys have been compromised? Absolutely. Some very well-known situations of certificate administrations on the internet being hacked. The hackers are inside. They're building their own keys for Microsoft. They're getting access to other people's private keys that normally no one would have access to. There are a lot of things that can happen if somebody gets a hold of that, which is why in Security Plus, we talk about key revocation and why that is an important part of this. Because if somebody does somehow get a hold of your private key, there does need to be a process in place for you to replace that private key, public key pair so that everybody knows. But it should be something that would be very rare if it occurs, if ever. And that's why we would consider asymmetric keys to be a little easier, a little more efficient to manage, and in fact, a lot safer when it comes to managing the keys.
I see. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling.
Right, bye-bye. This
is one of some people consider it to be the most complicated part of the exam is the last section of cryptography. I think it's the coolest part of the exam. I think it's the most fun part of the exam because there's so many interesting pieces. The way that all fits together is just so much more fun to me. Let's go to the 573 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, wait. I got to pot you up there, caller. Are you there? 573?
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I didn't have you turned on, so of course you didn't. So what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Tyler. I'm calling from Jefferson City, Missouri.
Welcome, Tyler. Thanks for being here. What can we do for you today?
So I want to get some perspective from somebody that's been in the industry for a little longer than I have. So I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm 22. This is my last year in college. I'm graduating with my bachelor's in cybersecurity and information assurance.
Nice.
From Western Governors University. And I've been in the position that I'm in now. I'm a systems administrator, or so that's what my position title is called. I've been here for roughly 6 months. I've been doing IT for around 3 years now. And I've just kind of jumped from place to place, outgrowing the positions that I've been in. And whenever I joined onto this position, I was promised, plenty of experience. I was promised that I would be working with, cloud technologies, and I would be able to, mess with firewalls and create routes and do all the stuff that I've studied to do. And I've done basically none of that, but they've paid me to do these things. I've just never had the opportunity to do these tasks. So I've looked for other positions, and I've ended up taking a position that pays considerably less, but that I know will give me more experience in the long run. And everybody that I've told this information to thinks I'm crazy. So I just want to kind of get some perspective. If you were in my shoes, about to graduate from college, and you have paper experience, you have a resume that looks good, but no real practical experience, would you jump from a position that doesn't have a whole lot going for it to a position that pays considerably less but has a lot more going for it?
You've got some huge advantages from the get-go, which is you're getting this degree, but at the same time you have practical IT experience. The thing that a lot of people struggle with, especially as they're getting through these degrees and getting their certifications, is just getting a foot in the door. There's a big conversation going on in Reddit this week about, do we take a help desk position? Some people say if you want to get in the door, help desk is a great place, and it is. Other people say help desk it's beneath you. Why would you do that? You should instead start shooting to be the system administrator, the Microsoft administrator, the Linux administrator. You should go up a notch and start there. And the reality, of course, is that there are jobs available for all of these things. The real challenge is just getting in the door. Once you get in the door, it's really more about your education and your experience that you can build on when you go to your next job, as you are seeing. And as attractive as it may sound to many people to be paid for a job that they don't even have to do, as you are now painfully aware, it's so limiting, because in the world of technology, and I'm not sure why people are maybe not aware of this or perhaps don't consider this, technology doesn't have a ceiling. There is no limit to how high you can go in this industry. It's not a situation where you are in construction, you can construct a house, maybe you're working in medicine, you're a doctor, that's it, you're going to be a doctor. You don't get to be a higher doctor or more of a doctor. I guess you could be the head of surgery at a hospital, but then you hit that limit. There's a ceiling associated with this. Technology doesn't have much of a ceiling. If there is one, it's really up there. There's a very high ceiling with technology, but that means that you have to be able to learn these things as you go. You can't move up in IT accidentally. There's nobody managing these massive wide area networks, these huge local area networks, these security infrastructures without actually knowing what they're doing. And I've traveled literally the world and talked to technologists for much of my career. And these people that I am talking to are very knowledgeable in what they are doing. I have met impressive technologists through my career, and always they have begun to move up to the level that makes sense for what they know at that particular time. If you don't know what you're doing in our industry, people find out pretty quick because stuff breaks and you have no way to fix it, and you end up not being able to do that job anymore, unfortunately. So the idea, and your particular conundrum is a challenging one. Do you stick with this job where there is nothing new to learn and yet a comfortable level of pay, or do you move into a position that's actually going to provide challenges, that's going to help you learn those things and pay you a little bit less? And considering where you are in the world, I don't know your particular personal situation, but you're relatively young. You're right out of college. You probably don't have an enormous mortgage. You probably don't have 3 kids in the house. Or you might. It just depends. Everybody has a different situation. But those are the things we use to be able to figure out what we have the flexibility to do. If people could let you do it for free, there are people that would do that job for free if they could get that level of experience, because they're just trying to get the foot in the door. So taking a little bit of a pay hit, but knowing that a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or whatever it makes sense for that particular job role you're in, that's where you move to the next job and you take this enormous increase in pay. That's where it comes in handy. It's an investment like anything else, and I think it's a good investment. The more you can find the jobs where you're learning and it's challenging and there's actually knowledge going into your brain, I think those are the best jobs. The worst jobs you could ever have are for you to be the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest one there, you're in the wrong place. You should be working somewhere else where someone else is the smartest one in the room and you can learn from them. That's the scale, one of the many things you should consider, at least when you're trying to go from job to job to job. And if you keep doing that, that's sort of the nature of our industry in IT. Whenever I look back at my parents, They worked in jobs for 30 and 40 years and retired. They got a pension. They stayed with the company or the organization for their entire career. You didn't jump around from place to place. It's a different world now, especially with IT. And employers expect that you'll be here for 3 to 5 years, and then you'll be moving on to the next thing. Or maybe we can move you up into another area of our company, and you can work there for 3 to 5 years. Sometimes that happens. And that's just a common part of IT. The pay part is up to you. What is it? How important is it to you? What value does it have to you? From that very broad description you gave, I think you've got a good argument there for making the move. Do you take a little cut in pay? Yeah. Temporarily? Yes. But you're not going to be there long. No one ever is. So are you going to be able to walk out of there with now, oh, I've got experience on Cisco. I know how to do the routing and the VLANing, and I can set up the wide area networks, and now I connect to the cloud, and I've done the orchestration, and I've done well, that's an amazing amount of information to stick on a resume that you were never going to have in your current position. So I see the advantages and disadvantages both ways, but I'm kind of leaning your direction as if you weren't able to tell.
And I am too. I just wanted to run this by somebody that, I don't really have any peers in the IT industry. So the only people I have to talk to about this are like my parents and friends who, to be frank, and I don't like insulting them like this, but they're kind of lowlives.
you have friends like me.
They don't understand the industry.
But this is, I was just about to say, in fact, this is the same argument I got from my parents every time I would talk to them about this, because I was coming out of college, I got a job, and 9 months after I got that first job, I went to my parents and said, I'm just letting you guys know I'm leaving this first job I got and I'm moving into this insurance company. And they said, oh, but you have a job right now. I don't know if you should really leave that job. I don't know that my parents have ever agreed with me ever leaving a job, because they're so conservative. They come from that world where just having the job was the important thing, and you stay there so long. Why would you ever leave that? They're paying you for things you're not even doing. This is a dream job. Of course, but we have a different plan in mind. And at the end of the day, we kind of have to go with what our plan is. You would regret it later if you didn't take that job. And ultimately, I think that's what's driving you.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the call and giving me the advice. You've been nothing but helpful to me since I've started my IT career 2 years ago.
You're gonna love this new position.
Where I am now.
It's gonna be great.
I know I will.
Thanks for the call, Tyler. I appreciate it. I gotta imagine this is a challenge that everybody has when they're trying to get into technology, and what they're doing is, when do we make the move? How do we make the move? Some people through my career were very, very good at this. They knew exactly when to move to the next place, and they were able to take their salary and move it up and up and up and up every time. It's not a game. It is a strategy for improving yourself and improving your position in your career. And they were very good at knowing what they wanted to do and where the next step would be. The thing that I got from them, the thing that I learned the most from them, is they never thought about the question they always ask in an interview, which is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 7 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why are you looking 5 years out? What's the next thing you want to do? That's the real question. What do you want to do next? Tyler knew what he wanted to do next. He wanted to work with routers and switches. He wanted to do cloud computing. He wanted to do all those things that were on his list. That's what he wanted to do next. All you have to know is what you want to do next. You don't have to worry about what you're doing 30 years from now or what your career path is going to be over the next 4 or 5 jobs. Don't overthink it. The world is going to be a different place 4 or 5 jobs from now. So don't worry about that. Figure out what you want to do next. Do that. Get in that position and then think, now what I want to do next. That's the place you should go. Enough of my talking. Back to the calls. 973. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Bradley, and I'm calling from New Jersey.
Welcome, Bradley. What can we do for you?
How are you? I'll just make it real quick.
Sure.
I'm here at a computer certification-based trade school. We take accredited classes through university. We study CompTIA, Microsoft, and Cisco.
Nice.
I'm a tutor here, and I have some students with me on the phone. We're all listening.
Hi, everybody.
We would just, yeah. Hey, we'd really just like to thank you for your videos and resources.
Now, Bradley's just saying that for everyone listening so that he doesn't have to talk the whole time in class. He just assigns the videos, and then actually Bradley's probably stuck having to decipher what I got wrong in the videos. He's doing more work than I am. So anyways, you're in the worst spot. But fortunately, Bradley is able to send me emails and say, you made a mistake in that other video. And so I can go back and edit it. I want to thank you in all seriousness for watching, for going through these things. By the way, for those of you on watching and those of you that have attended these, I love the in-person classes. I don't think there's anything better than not just being there and learning in person from someone, but everybody who's in the class, make sure you get everybody else's contact information. These will be people that you will run into over and over throughout your career. If you haven't linked in with everybody right now, make sure you link in with everyone. You never know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when out of the blue, somebody says, I've got a great job you would fit perfectly for, or you just keep up with these people throughout the years. You see them over and over again. It's a great opportunity, not just for learning, but for these fantastic connections you make in our industry.
Yeah, I'm trying to push these kids through 901 and 902. So hopefully they get there by the time they retire the exam.
Clock is ticking. Get on it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bradley. I appreciate the call. That's by the way, for those of you wondering, the 900 series A+ exam retires on July 31st. So make sure you get in there and get that done. And thank you so much for holding for so long. Some other callers have held for a long time as well, like the 650 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for holding on for so long. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Rick, calling from San Mateo.
Welcome, Rick. Thanks for calling in. What question you have today?
I've been studying for the A+ exams, and you talk a lot about the CertMaster program and how you can use it to renew your certifications.
Yes.
When I go to the website, they look like they're selling it as a study guide tool. What do you feel about using that as a study guide?
There are, and this is kind of a challenge with nomenclature on the CompTIA side. I'm not sure if they've really done a great job with their branding or not, because the term CertMaster is an overall brand of a series of different products that CompTIA has. But there are certain CertMaster products that are used for other purposes. For example, CertMaster Learning is a higher end training tool that you would use before getting your certification. If you were going to renew your certification, you would get CertMaster CE, stands for continuing education. So CertMaster CE is the one that you would look for if you were trying to renew your cert. So that may be what you're running into. As you see on the website for CompTIA, it's CertMaster this, CertMaster the other thing, CertMaster 17 different things, and you kind of get lost in the term CertMaster. But if you're trying to renew, the thing that you are looking for is a product called CertMaster CE, Charlie Echo, and that should at least get you to the right page so that you would know what you needed to focus on to renew this. You're looking for, let me see if I can bring it up on my screen for those of you who are here. There it is. The CertMaster CE is the one for renewal. It's only for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And for those of you who've never heard of this before, I have a video on how to renew your CompTIA certification in just a few hours. That's the name of the video. And it talks about all of the different ways you could do it, but it focuses on CertMaster CE. That's the one you want to find.
Well, I'm not looking to renew because I haven't got the certification.
Oh, okay. Maybe I've misunderstood completely.
They had one I was looking at that when you scroll down on the A+ site, it's a CertMaster program.
Yes.
And you can buy the CertMaster program, and it comes with a voucher.
That's right.
You get a voucher so you can take the test, too.
And there are different types of CertMaster programs that you could get as well. It's almost the same scenario where you're not even sure what tools might be available to you. So CompTIA's e-learning with CertMaster, they have two flavors of it, as I recall. One's a CertMaster Learning, and another one's called CertMaster Practice. They have CertMaster Labs now. CertMaster Learn, CertMaster Labs, and CertMaster Practice. So they've got a 3 different CertMaster products along with the CertMaster CE for renewal. They have a number of different bundles handy. I have not gone through much of the CertMaster programs. CompTIA came to me and I contributed a little bit of content to the CertMaster Learn products. I don't even know if they're still using them for the Network Plus and Security Plus, but they use my videos as part of what they do there. But they don't use them for the CertMaster Learn is much more comprehensive than just my videos. They've effectively combined a book and videos and Q&A all in one little package. And I've looked at a little bit of it, but I've not gone through a ton of it. So I can't give you any direct review of the product other than I liked what I saw when I was looking at it. I've not seen everything associated with CertMaster Labs, and I've not really seen CertMaster Practice. So I'm afraid I'm not a very good resource for that either. A good place you could go, though, to get people's review of this, I think, is probably the CompTIA subreddit. That's one of the best places you could go to post something and have people really give an opinion because they got to use it. So that's at reddit.com/r/CompTIA. And that may be a good place to kind of get some independent ideas from people who may have already spent the money so that you can decide whether you want to as well.
Okay, because I watch all your videos. Those are really good. I bought your book, so that helps. And I was just looking for, because they have practice tests that you can take on there, and it looks like a good idea. I'm just not sure.
Well, it's one of the things I talk about when I say whenever you're studying, you need a good book, you need some videos, you need Q&A, you need plenty of hands-on. Those are your 4 key things that I tell people they should have. This covers about 3, maybe even all 4 of those things, depending on what they put into the product.
All right, cool. Thanks for the info.
I appreciate the call. Thanks, Rick. That's one of the things when you get into trying to find the right combination of things. It's hard to find the right combination. There's so many different options out there. I don't have time to go through every single possible book that's available out there, but other people already have. So that's why often I will recommend you check things out on the Reddit side. Let's go to 620. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Well, there's...
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Sean.
Hey, Sean.
And I'm in Richmond, Kentucky.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been watching your new series, the CompTIA A+.
Yes.
And I got through the laptop part, and I thought, man, this is going to be, if it's anything like this, it's going to be good. I got the IP, and it went, all of a sudden, I didn't know what you were talking about. Right. I had to watch it 3 times. I still wasn't sure.
That's...
But a little brief history about me. I studied 4 computer languages in high school before I graduated, but I never went to college to get a degree. I'm 50 years old, and I'm thinking about making the switch to cybersecurity. And I'm starting off with my A+. And I wanted to thank you for all the effort that you put into doing this for us and let you know that I appreciate it. It's helped me greatly. But I've built my own computers since 1999 when the first one I bought blew up on my kitchen table. I was like, nope, that's not going to work. So I figured out how to build a system of compatible. I had to go through the learning what is compatible, what you can use, what you can't use. But I just never chose to chase that because everybody that I talked to before had said, well, you're too qualified. You got too many qualifications. I wouldn't know where to put you. So I was like, well, I guess I'm just too smart for it. But now that I'm 50 years old, I'm getting to the end of my truck driving career, and I want to start with my A+. Where would you suggest that I go after that if I'm going after a cybersecurity job?
Your experience hitting the networking part of A+ is not unusual. Networking is its own world of seemingly crazy, nonsensical binary to decimal to hexadecimal in minutia. It's just a huge jump in technology over dealing with PCs and operating systems, and yet it's a pretty important part of connecting anything these days is, at least some networking to be able to work with it.
Extremely important.
So the thing that you're going to hate to hear me say, as someone who was a former systems engineer at a next generation firewall company, is there's a huge emphasis in networking. There's an enormous emphasis in networking in anything relating to what people are calling cybersecurity. I more specifically call IT security. I think sometimes people put cybersecurity into the category of people who are software developers who are making their applications more secure. I think people sometimes put that into the cybersecurity category. Sometimes people put penetration testing and attacking of networks into the cybersecurity. And indeed, I think all of those things do fit into that broad nebulous marketing term that has been created called cybersecurity. But the majority of what people are doing in the corporate environment that deal with security on the IT side, I'm just generically calling IT security. These are the people administering the firewalls. They're setting up the IPsec VPNs between your company and your partners. They're configuring the client-based VPNs for all of your users that are outside of the corporate offices. They're setting up the multi-factor authentication methods that are being used, and how they're protecting the mobile devices and the apps that are running on those. All of those things are really the purview of the IT security folks. IT security people don't really do programming. There's some emphasis in what some people will call programming, really scripting. Things like Python help a little bit, but you don't really see a huge emphasis on that in most environments. Most people will
What is the job what is the job title of the people who actually are watching the network traffic and noticing when an attack is being perpetrated and stopping the perpetrators before they get the chance to compromise the system?
It's a broad.
What is that job title?
It's a broad set of job titles you'll find in most places, but it can be a systems engineer, it can be a security engineer, it could be a security analyst, it could be a security administrator, but generally those are the types of job roles in the IT security department. Most of those is people who are setting up the alarming, alerting, and reporting to be able to stop these things before they ever get in. So I mentioned a lot of other things, but managing their intrusion prevention solutions, managing their malware detection systems, managing their email anti-spam systems. Those are also part of that group. Nowhere in there was programming. And I can imagine if you were to show up and say, I know C, I know Python, I know I know Perl scripting, I know all of these different programming techniques, and I'd like to get a job working in IT security. There's like, whoa, those are two different worlds. We generally put programming in the computer science side of things, and we put everything else in the IT side of things. And so even if you know a lot about programming, I used to have my own company where I created my own software and sold it. That was a long time ago, but I would never tell anybody that I had those types of programming skills if I wanted to get a job working in network administration, security administration, or anything related to IT security, because that's a different world with a different group of people that do a different thing. Those two worlds rarely collide. And so you do kind of have to focus now your efforts on, if you're wanting to get into security, I would say focus on the networking side. And it may take first that you focus on the operating system side, then you focus on the networking side, and then you're naturally going to overlay the networking piece with security. Because everything I just mentioned about managing and implementing the firewall, you're going to need to know tons about networking. You're going to be able to need to know setup routing. You need to know how to integrate with the BGP protocols that are being used on the internet. You also have to integrate with the switches that are on the inside. It has to be built into a redundant fashion. So you usually have two firewalls, either in an active-active or in an active-passive configuration. Both of those have their own engineering that have to be done. All of that's networking. None of what I just said had anything to do with security. So after doing all of that, then you got to layer the security on top of all of those pieces. And so whenever there was a great question I saw on Reddit this week that said, people who are in security and IT security, what do you ask people in an interview? And that may be a good thread to go back and find. But one of the first things we would always ask people in an interview when we wanted to hire an additional systems engineer for this next generation firewall, one of the first questions that I asked one of the systems engineers up north, he would always start with, tell me everything you know about ARP, the ARP protocol. Tell me all the different ARP types you know. Tell me when you would use those different types of ARP. And then from there, he got a very good understanding of where this person stood in the networking world and ostensibly where they stood in the security world as well. But from there, they could go further. And if they looked at him and goes, ARP, you mean like what a dog makes? No, that's ARF. We're looking for ARP.
No.
So if they didn't know what ARP was, you could pretty much end the interview right there. Or if they went into proxy ARP, if they talked about how the ARP protocol is constructed, if they talked about problems they found with ARP, if they talked about situations where they troubleshoot ARP, okay, now we can go to the next step, which is let's talk about NAT. Let's talk about firewalls. Let's talk about intrusion prevention. Let's talk about URL filtering. Let's talk about malware prevention, the techniques. So you can always go further from there. But I thought it was very telling.
After I get my plus, should I take the networking plus next, or should I go for CCNA security? Or should I just do the security plus?
Well, those are two. Let's first take the first question, which is, and this is a common question that people have, which is, I want to get a network certification. Do I get Network Plus, or do I get CCNA routing and switching? And you might as well ask, do I need to build a birdhouse, or do I need to build a skyscraper? Okay, those are two very different things. They require a completely different skill set. They are no way compatible with each other. They are not the same thing. They are not used for the same thing. And you would never put them into the same spot to try to figure out, what do I put here? Do I put a birdhouse or do I put a skyscraper? You wouldn't do that. And yet people do that all the time with those two certifications. The birdhouse, the Network Plus is that foundational certification that gives you an idea of technologies and how they're implemented. CCNA routing and switching is an extensive, highly technical certification involving multiple exams to be able to get through. It requires a huge amount of knowledge at the command line of Cisco specific devices. There's on top of that an entire set of knowledge you have to have of the technology that implements that. It is no way even close to being the same thing. Now, somebody will say then, but wait, the CCNA routing and switching, people look at it with much more an emphasis in knowledge. Like, you really know something in networking if you know the CCNA routing and switching. Well, yeah, because it's really, really hard exam. Of course they do. But
yeah.
You would never jump into that as a neophyte, as someone who's never touched a network. I would never tell somebody to, just throw the Network Plus away and get the CCNA routing and switching. Instead, you have to turn the mirror around and say, what are you trying to do? Are you trying just to get that first job in networking? Because people are not going to hire an entry-level security position. There aren't a lot of those. I wouldn't say never, but there's not a lot of them available in the world. Most of the time, the security people are being hired out of the network teams, someone who's very network knowledgeable.
Okay.
So the real step is, how do I get that next job? I mentioned this on an earlier call. You don't want to plan for the thing that's 10 jobs away. What do you do next? And then what do you do next? And then what do you do next? Maybe you put together a very basic structure. I need to get my foot in the door somewhere. Then I need to work up into the networking team. Then I need to move into security. And maybe that's in the same company. Maybe that's in different companies. But that's a very common path to be able to move up in an organization and get into a security role.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it very much, and I will definitely be back on the next live chat. I'm going to try to be more involved with all of them and work my way through. I've just got to figure out the right path for a beginner that doesn't have an IT degree, and I don't have even my first job. I'm trying to get things in line to where I can get my first job. That's where I really trying to figure out where to start, basically.
Well, you're an old guy like me, so we may not know where we want to go and what we want to do, but we know people in places that know more than we do. So this may be a situation where you go back to your current employer and say, I know a lot about what you're doing here. I'd love to work in IT in this same organization. Or maybe you go to a competitor's organization and say, I know a lot about this industry. I would be great as working on your help desk and doing things in this industry. Or maybe you know people at church. Maybe you know people at the PTA. Maybe you know people at the softball league that do have these types of jobs or have these organizations. Those are people we know people. We can take advantage of that.
I actually had 2 IT people in my family. My son-in-law works for a school district, and he's in IT, but he spent $70,000 to go to college to get a degree. And I have another, I guess you'd call him my brother-in-law, and he works for the police department. He's been in IT for 20-plus years, and when I talked to him about it, he said, "Go ahead and get your A+, but I always concentrate more on getting the Cisco and Microsoft certifications, and then get your first job, and then start working your way through some more, later."
They're not bad strategies.
But,
they're trying to avoid that first level job of you're going to have to get your foot in the door and work the help desk or work that first job that is just a grunt level work to be able to get things going. They know that people who have skills in Microsoft and Cisco are getting jobs that have a higher salary and more responsibility, and they're not wrong. But but you also have that situation like, why aren't you getting the CCIE? Why aren't you getting the highest level Cisco certification? Those people are paid the most because you can't jump up that high to start with. You have to have a graduated path to get there. And maybe somebody in your area would hire you with a Microsoft certification and get you in the door. That's a perfectly valid strategy. But I bet if you were to look at job postings in your area, that there will be a lot more postings looking for an A+ or Network Plus level person as an entry level. So maybe that's your next step, is do a little more research.
Well, back to the drawing board.
That's how it always works, Sean.
I appreciate your time, and like I said, I will definitely be more involved from now on.
We look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks, Sean. That's a big challenge. We have all of these challenges that when somebody's trying to make a shift in IT. And the callers I see there, I apologize for the delay because I'm talking a lot today. But there's also this challenge of people, old people like me, that suddenly have been working one type of role and really have a passion for technology and want to move into IT. It's a bigger challenge than someone who's coming out of college. There's not only the situation where we've built ourselves up in another industry and probably are making at least a good wage in doing that. Now we're moving into technology with no experience, and you're probably going to have to take a pay cut. Already, everybody's unhappy. Now you also have the situation of finding somebody that's going to hire you, knowing the most you would be able to stick around in that particular organization is quite limited compared to somebody out of college. There's also a bit more pressure on hiring people to pay better for someone who has a family, who has kids. Are you going to give them the same pay as you're giving somebody right out of college? If everything was fair, yes, but that's not the way things work, to be quite honest. And there's also the problem of ageism, which is a significant issue regardless of the industry. It has nothing to do with technology. It's more about who do you hire, a young person or an old person. And that's not something we're going to resolve on the study group, but it's something you have to think about. And that's why I tell people when you're moving from industry to industry, leverage your previous knowledge. If you are in trucking, you should be able to get a job at a transportation company in their IT department. If you're in medicine, you're working as a nurse or a doctor or a technician, you should be able to get a job working at a hospital in their IT department. You're going to be the most knowledgeable IT person they have when it comes to how the business operates. Plus, you know people. You have to leverage people you know because you're at a disadvantage. You are. Not because of something you know, because of what the society has done to old people. That's a challenge. And so taking advantage of people you know, not taking advantage, but you already know people, it's an advantage for you to know them. and they know you, and they know that you come to work early. They know you work hard. They know you'll do what's needed, and they trust you. Of course, they're going to hire somebody like that. But someone who doesn't know you off the street doesn't have that same perspective. So there's different things you have to worry about that go well beyond the technology world of things. And sometimes that's the overriding situation. Back to the phones, 310. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. My name's Q, and I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Thanks for holding for so long.
Just wanted to... No problem. Loving the new look.
Is it the hair? Is that what you mean?
The phone display and the blurred in the back, both blurred background.
Thank you.
Okay. I had a couple of questions, and it's just concepts that I need to clear before I take the exam. I'm just going to jump right in.
Sure.
If you could just tell me the difference between IPsec and TLS.
Sure.
First.
These are, whenever you get into encryption, especially encryption over the network, it is such a mire of technologies that have been created a long time ago, and yet we continue to use them through the years, and they've been massaged a bit and changed a little bit to fit into our world of things. But let's just talk about browsers and how we communicate, because I buy stuff online all the time. I go to Amazon, I go to other websites, and I buy things. If you come to my website, if you go to professormaster.com right now, everything you do on my website is over an encrypted channel. There are no non-encrypted pieces on my website because I've designed it so that when you come to my site, everything is just an encryption. And it's done that way using what we colloquially call in the industry SSL. You'll hear that term everywhere. SSL, you need an SSL certificate. This is using SSL encryption. Technically speaking, the browser communicating to my web server, your browser communicating to my web server, is sending protocols that are encrypted with TLS, which is actually a newer version of SSL. We took SSL and we created a new version of it. And now instead of calling it SSL Next Generation or SSL version 3 or 4 or 5, we call it TLS. And whenever I hear somebody using TLS, I think, oh, there's somebody who knows their encryption, because they're not calling it SSL. But in the industry, even today, with professionals, we still call it SSL. I think because it's easier to say. TLS is a little blocky for the tongue to make. SSL just rolls off the tongue. It's SSL. So whenever you hear someone say today SSL, they really do mean TLS, because nobody's using SSL anymore. There's a lot of problems, vulnerabilities, and issues using SSL in the actual world. Whenever you're dealing with web browsers that are communicating to a web server over an encrypted channel, they are using the TLS protocol. That's a kind of a limited thing to do, though. What about all the other stuff we do that's outside of a browser? What about communication on our phones? What if we're in a coffee shop and we want our email traffic to be encrypted that's not in a browser? Maybe we're using an email client like Outlook, or maybe we're using a client like a free client like Thunderbird, one of the ones that's out that you could use, just a client on your operating system. What about the games that you play and the communication that they're doing? Those aren't in a browser, but we still would like to have some way to set up an encrypted tunnel between either a user and another site, or even sometimes, what if you were able to connect two sites over the internet, but tell the two routers at the end, if you ever send anything across the internet to this other site, encrypt everything. Don't ever have a case where anybody on the internet would ever see anything sit between these. And it doesn't matter how the users on the other sides are configured. It doesn't matter if you're using a browser or not. You're creating this entire tunnel of encrypted traffic between point A and point B. One of the technologies to do that very commonly is IPsec. So IPsec is one, if you're doing site-to-site encryption, it's almost always going to be an IPsec tunnel that does that. If it's something that's from a user's workstation, and you maybe have a VPN solution that you're connecting to, you're using a VPN client to connect back to a VPN concentrator at a remote site, it commonly doesn't use IPsec. It commonly uses a TLS or SSL client to be able to do that, because SSL is so well known and it passes so easily through firewalls that it's a very easy way to create some encryption. So there is a little overlap there, and it's easy to confuse the two. But if you break them out as to one's really for browser communication and some VPNs, and the other one's really designed for tunnels that are permanently set up between locations using IPsec, and really think of them both in those particular terms, that's a good way to delineate. I of course will get many cards and letters at this point from people going, no, there's other ways to implement this. And yes, I know. But we're talking very broadly, and if we had to separate, that's how I'd separate them.
Okay, thank you for clearing that. The next one is going to be from the cryptography section. I don't really understand the XOR term.
This is a more of a programming term that we kind of use to explain how cryptography is working, because it's the XOR that we would use to make that happen. And it really describes how you do binary calculations. A good example of this is if you take a 1 and a 1, and if you have these two ones together and you want to create a binary representation of those two ones, are you going to do it with a 0 or with a 1? It describes how you're going to do binary calculations. You can have an or you can have an XOR. And as you can imagine, the XOR is the opposite to the OR. If somebody's trying to combine these binary pieces together and have that capability, that's how we're sort of describing it. Don't get too wrapped up in the programming terminology behind how we're doing the calculations of this cryptography, and deal more with why we're making that calculation there. And it's really making that calculation so that things are more obfuscated. It's making the data more scrambled. It's a data scrambler that we're using. And it's a way that we could make the data a little more scrambled as we're sending it through the network without performing some very complex cryptographic hash or advanced algorithm to it. We're just scrambling it up a bit in a way that we can unscramble on the other side.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Any free websites where I can practice exams before taking it? Because I'm taking the exam on the 2nd of May.
There's a limited number out there, and the quality between some of the sites and some of the questions on some of these sites varies widely. Some of the more popular in the industry are out there. You can find them on, there's a great list of them on the CompTIA subreddit that have them. They have a wiki there, and they have a great list of sites that people use for those. I think that's the best place I can point you to, because they're constantly updating that list. It's a very well curated list, and they're not putting things there that are lower quality or that people haven't found valuable.
Okay, I'll check that out. And lastly, any suggestions before I go in and take the exam? Any last minute recommendations?
The one I always give, and it's probably one of the best ones I can, is that CompTIA has given you an entire list of everything you need to know. That's your final checklist. So go back to your exam objectives, read through everything that's in those exam objectives, use it as a checklist. If you can take one of those topics and explain it to someone else, you can cross that one off your list. If any part of that you're kind of fuzzy on, maybe you could circle that one, and that's another one you should study up for your exam. It's a big list. Security Plus is a massive exam, but at least they list out for you everything you need to know. So don't get stuck on any single point. Circle the things that you think are vague. Narrow the scope down. You're probably going to be able to cross out quite a bit that's on that list currently. Cross them out, narrow the scope, and then focus on those things before walking in.
Okay, is time management critical?
Well, you're getting a maximum of 90 questions, and you have 90 minutes. I would say, yeah, time management's a real pain on this exam, especially since they start you off with the performance-based questions. Some of the performance-based questions on Security Plus are pretty involved. Just reading through the instructions is going to take you a minute. And then after that, you actually have to finish the process that they've given to you. So that's why I tell a lot of people, skip over those, go to the multiple choice, then come back. Other people say, no, I want to attack those first. I want to get through them, and then I can rush through the multiple choice. It's more of your personal preference than anything. But time management on Security Plus is probably more of an issue than you would find on A Plus or Network Plus, in my opinion.
Okay, all right, perfect. I will study up, and thank you for all the help. Thank you.
It sounds like you're on the right path. Best of luck. That's one where when you're trying to decide when to walk into the exam, I think the exam objectives are the best thing you can do. They are the perfect checklist to be able to have that's there and have those pieces. Let's go to 540. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good morning, Professor. How you doing?
Oh, doing good. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, sir. I have a Security Plus certification.
Sure.
And I'm looking for a job right now. I'm looking for my first job to be in the industry.
Nice.
And at this time, I did like 2 interviews, didn't work well. And right now, at this time, the company are calling me to give me a position of networking position.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit confused if I have to choose this position or I have to follow my cybersecurity that I'm doing in a network security plus, you know. So yesterday, company called me to give me like a network position, which is the position it deploy like a network specialist, be assistant to be like a firewall, Cisco routing. That I don't have any experience in that, but since I have the security clearance, they're trying to hire me. And I don't have any experience. I told myself, is that a good way to get in the industry, or I have to be in the security side? So I'm a little bit confused, and I'm trying to be situated in that position.
There are people listening now that are yelling at their screens and saying, yes, take this job. Totally take this job. One of the things I mentioned earlier in the study group is that the best path to security is through networking. It is by far the most prominent path to a IT security role is to have a solid foundation in networking. And if somebody's willing to hire you to help with firewalls, Cisco routers, Cisco switches, and learn immediately from the bottom up that particular set of technologies, that's a fantastic opportunity. That's really good. And I understand that there are limitations they have with finding the right people with the right security clearances, and you have that. And so some people in the chat room are saying, but wait, what if you don't know anything about routers? You don't know anything about switches. You don't know anything about making these things work. They know that. They know you don't. You've already had an interview with them. They know what your experience is. They know that they're going to need to train you as you go. But there are people there that already know this. And something that comes up often in the industry is this term of imposter syndrome. People haven't heard of this. This is where you work into a job and it turns out you really don't know everything you need to know to do this job. In the world of IT, we call that a job. That's just the normal thing we do in life. We never know everything that we need to know. A single person can't possibly know everything there is to know about routing, know everything there is to know about switching, know everything there is to know about firewalls. There's no way. There's no person in the world they could hire that would know everything that they needed to know with all of those. This is just the normal way, but you're going to jump into it. They're going to show you how it works. You're going to go to training. They're going to give you manuals. You're going to have video training. You're going to go through certification classes. You're going to learn those things. And what a great springboard to get into the IT security role than passing through that networking course. It sounds like a great thing to me. I would be jumping at a position like that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. And I mean, it's a contract, it's like a 12-month contract, which is a year. So the lady asked me, I would be very comfortable for the contract for 12 years after switching to be part of another company. I say, yeah, I would take it since I'm learning. I just want to learn. Because I know on my resume, I put like a security analyst, which I already have a lot of business experience in there, but For me, to build my, yes, go ahead, sir.
It's a very common path. Being able to take a job as a contractor means they're not hiring you as an employee. You may yourself have to get your own health care, or they may offer you a way to get health care through that organization. You just have to make sure you get the right things in place. But it's an extremely good way to get the knowledge you need. And that type of experience is one that's going to be hard to find anywhere else.
That's correct.
What a good opportunity.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
I'm happy for you. Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks for calling. Best of luck. That's a great position to be in too. Think of that, getting that. You want to be in security. They offer you networking. Gosh darn it. I guess I'm going to have to take this networking role where they're going to train me on everything, and I'll learn everything I need to know that in a year I'll be able to use to go somewhere else and make more money. That's what I have to do in this tough industry. Then I'm going to do it. Well, good job, sir. Well done. That's outstanding. 719, thanks for holding for so long. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 719. Are you there? 719. 719. There he is.
Professor Messer is Chuck with, I'm just calling in to tell you I'm taking my Security Plus tomorrow. Your stuff has been very helpful. I've had this SYO 101, the 401, and now I'm going for the 501.
Wow. Okay.
So I can tell you that the tests are getting harder. I just wanted to also thank you for your 7-second IP subnetting information. That has made a world of difference for me working on my CCNet.
Nice.
So other than that, here we go. Another one goes. Let's see.
Fantastic. And Chuck, you're right. I've done a course for the 301, the 401, and now the 501. I have to agree with you. The 501 is probably the biggest and the most demanding of those three by far. And for as far as the 7-second subnetting, I put that together because I'm an idiot when I go to take an exam. For those of you not familiar, I put together a method for subnetting where I write out this chart, and it allows me to subnet in a matter of seconds when I'm sitting in an exam, and it doesn't require any math, which was the part in my brain that was my biggest problem. And a lot of people will laugh at that, but I got every single one of my subnetting questions right on the exam, and I did it really, really fast, and I did it because it was Cisco. It's not like we probably won't have much, if any, subnetting on Security Plus, but boy, it sure helps if you're in one of those networking exams. So thank you for that.
Yeah. It's like one of those nightly things, like a memorization. I write that chart out. It takes about a half an hour to do it for me still, but it really helps me with the subnetting. I can almost see it before I do it now. So, But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to thank you for the information and the great courses, and I've been using the Pearson with their online testing device there, their testing software, and it's been very, very, very helpful.
Oh, that's great.
I highly recommend it.
I'm glad that's worked. That's a good, so other people were asking earlier about some of the things they can use, and that's an excellent recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, well, you have a good day, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Chuck. I've had people send me emails and say, your 7-second subnetting, you wrote this, well, you must be an idiot to have to write all of these things out. And I say, yes, you got it. You figured it out. That's exactly why I did it. It's nice when those things work out. People think they're sending me the insult, and I'm explaining to them, no, that's why I did it, because I can't count when I'm in the middle of an exam. When I'm outside the exam and sitting around with other IT professionals and we have to deal with subnetting, for some reason, it's not a problem. We're all able to do it. Sometimes it's hard. We have to do the math, and okay, we'll check it. And okay, we got the gateway right. Is it in the same subnet? Yes. We got it. It's not a big deal. It's the pressure of the exam turns me into an idiot. So I have to have that cheat sheet. I have to have that chart available because that's the only way I can get through it and know that I did it right. 858, what's your name? Where are you calling from? 858. Are you there, 858? We'll hold while we wait for you to pick up. Are you on mute? Maybe you're on mute because we don't hear you. And you're right there. I'll stick you back in the queue. And we'll try to.
Hello?
Oh, there he was. Wait, 858. We're coming back to you. We're back to you. Hey, 858,
yes.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Hello? Hey, what's your question? Where are you calling from? What's your name? All those things.
Okay, my name is Noam Mantaka.
Welcome, Norm.
Noam. I have an arm.
Noam. Thank you, sir. What's your question today?
Okay, so I just graduated college and CompTIA and everything. I didn't pass the certification because language barrier. But to find a job, what I did is I started from bottom of a distribution center that slowly I wanted to go up with this company and go to do IT.
Nice.
Do you think that I did the right thing, or just to stick up and try to get to a data center, or, something that connect to the IT?
So it sounds like what you're doing now in this distribution center, is it an IT or a technical job?
No.
Okay.
It's just a big company. It's Lowe's and distribution center that when I did the interview, they promised me that after 6 months they do evaluation, and slowly I will go up with the company.
Okay.
But what I want them to see that I'm good worker and, they can rely on me and let me go slowly, to the IT department.
This is, at least they know when they hired you, you had aspirations of wanting to do something technical. They know that you would like to eventually get into their IT department. So this is not something that is a surprise to them. So that part's good. Do you know, have you met or are you aware of the people that are in the IT department for this company?
No.
Okay. So you've got a challenge there to at least meet those people, know who they are, and somehow get involved with what they are doing. You have to somehow make yourself aware to them so that if next time they have an opening on their help desk or opening for a system administrator or a network person, that they'll start thinking of you. It may be a good thing to reach out to them internally if you happen to know who they are and ask them, what should I do if I'm interested in moving from where I am currently into a role in IT? Are there certain certifications that you would recommend? Are there certain bits of knowledge that I should do? Should I have certain things in my home lab that I should set up? Are there things that you are doing? And maybe ask them, are there certain projects going on where they're having to come in on the weekend or after hours that you could possibly help with? Because occasionally you're having to rack equipment, you're having to move things from place to place, you're having to build out some servers in the data center, and sometimes you just need someone with a couple of arms and some eyeballs to help you put these things together. Those are opportunities to learn that as well, but you need to meet those folks. You need to get an understanding of who that is and get on their radar if you're hoping to move over.
Exactly. So what I did actually is to go inside the door. A door is open.
Yep.
I went inside.
Yep.
And then because it's a big company, they have IT department. So this is how I want. This is my strategic to do.
One of the things
I want to know that I'm doing the right thing.
I think you are doing the right thing. Anytime you can get in the door, it's the right thing. It may not even be a technical job to start with, but also keep in mind that the job you're doing for this company is one that you could also apply to this company's competition. If this company's IT department isn't going to hire you, any other company that's doing this type of distribution or deals with these types of products would probably love to have somebody working in IT that had a knowledge of this, because it helps you understand more as you're sitting there and helping people on the other side. Oh yeah, I used to do what you did. I used to work in the warehouse. I used to work in shipping and receiving. I used to be on the logistics side. I used to get the pallets onto the truck. I used to do all those things. So when somebody's having a problem with their barcode reader, you know how critical it is to get that barcode reader back up and running.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
So
you gave me some confidence that I'm doing the right thing. And surprisingly, like I said, I have language barrier and I never worked in the United States. And the first time that I applied for a job and the first interview and they hired me, I was so surprised. So I immediately took the job.
I'm not getting much of a language barrier here, Noam. You're ever able to talk to me, and I'm able to understand you with no problem. So don't let that even be close to being your issue. Keep hunting around for those jobs. Keep putting in those resumes. Keep going on those interviews, and one of these is going to hit.
Wow. Thank you so much for your motivation words. And yes, okay.
Best
Thank
of luck,
you so
sir.
much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
I have no problem. I knew everything going on in that call. We've had other calls. That was not one of them. With no issues there. So absolutely keep doing what you're doing. And it's the same strategy that someone who's worked in another industry has to go through. You know the business. You understand that side of it. You may be able to get into IT in that same vertical. So if you're in transportation, get in IT in the transportation industry. If you're in distribution, get into IT in the distribution industry. Those types of things are people in IT love to hire people from the business side because you have a perspective of the company that people in IT simply don't have. We're all been looking at the Windows server and trying to figure out why the update on the latest Windows update didn't install properly. In the other side, you got a barcode reader down. The entire company is relying on that barcode reader. Nobody realizes that, except you do, because you used to have to handle that barcode reader. That happens all the time for those. Back to the phones real quick. 209. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
This is Randall from Stockton. How are you?
Hello, Randall. Thank you for calling.
I'm a fan of yours, and I think it would be great if you put all your YouTubes on an EEPROM and sold it.
I think that's not a bad idea. And mostly I do, by the way. I don't know if many people realize that, but all of my courses, I have offline versions that people are able to purchase on an EEPROM on a USB flash drive. I absolutely do. So and it's interesting how many people want that in an offline version, but there's still places in the world where it's kind of tough to get internet. So that does come in handy.
I wasn't aware of it.
Yep. I'm clearly not doing a very good marketing job, Randall.
I'm an A+ tech. I've flunked the network exam twice and the security exam twice. I use all the info on Amazon, all the books, and the questions aren't the same. Where could I get a copy of the old exam questions?
Well, CompTIA in their strategy of how they do things do not make any of those questions publicly available. It's sort of like it's kind of odd to see that too, because if you go back to a lot of organizations that do certifications or do standardized testing, I'm thinking specifically about tests that you would use to get into law school, for instance, you can go back over the last 20 years of questions that were actually given on the exam to kind of get a feel for what they do. CompTIA doesn't do that. They don't disclose any of that information, and they don't make them publicly available, unfortunately. You kind of have to find the right people that are creating questions that are very similar and go with that. It may be a situation where you go out to Reddit and ask them, what have you found? Because there are these pockets of questions, depending on the exam, that people have written that are really good and really close to the same feel and the same style as the exam. There are others that aren't so great at all. So you do have to be very particular.
I've taken a lot of exams in my life, and I feel the CompTIA exams are just like legal papers. They're written in legalese. And to get the question right, you have to know the answer before you read the question.
It is.
You find this true?
I can't say that you're wrong.
I'm not trying to bother you. I know you're extremely highly intelligent and well trained.
Well,
I'm just looking for info.
You clearly have not spoken with Mrs. Professor Messer, or she would correct you. The exams themselves, I don't disagree with you. I have read some of the actual questions from an actual exam when I was taking it, and it's all people. Here's how people have described it, and I think it's a pretty good description, that they've taken a perfectly worded question, they use Google Translate to translate it into another language, and then they use Google Translate to translate it back to English, And then that's the question you get on the exam. And I can't, that's a pretty good description with some of these questions. They have gotten better through the years. I've noticed a marked improvement over where things have been in the past, that the questions are becoming a little bit easier to understand what's going on, and there's not as much of a need for you to interpret what they're trying to tell you rather than what they're actually saying in the questions. I think the latest Security Plus and even the latest Network Plus have been pretty good along those lines. Previous versions were not as good, so they're getting better. I can't argue with you that they still have room for improvement, but I think they're getting a little better. I think the key for you, and I think the key for a lot of people, is to find a set of sample questions that have been written with the exam in mind and that were really sculpted, that were really built to emulate the type of cadence or nomenclature that they would use on that exam.
I see. I have one more question.
Sure.
I hope you don't regard this as too personal. Are you really that smart, or do you read from a script?
All right. The first, no, not really that smart, and no, I don't read from a script. So that's one of the things that does come in handy. If you were to see the actual video of me creating one of these videos, I'll give you an example. I just finished the video on command lines in Windows that I'm doing for the new A+, and it took me an hour, just over an hour, to shoot that video. That video is going to end up being about 20 minutes long. So it's me constantly.
I already saw it, and I have it saved to my reading list on my Windows 10, and I'm gonna view it at least 2 more times.
It's one of these things where I have to say it one time, and I'll even say to myself as I'm recording this, well, that sounded stupid. Let's try it another way. And then I'll say it again, and then I'll say it again. With a number of these, I'll do 5 or 6 takes, and then I'll take out the pieces of that make more sense, so that I'm taking out the part where I'm completely wrong, or I said it in a way that wasn't completely clear, but it gives me a chance to really construct the description of what I'm trying to say so that I think it makes better sense for what you're able to hear. I don't have a script, though. It would take me so long to create the script that it would just be clunky. Plus, you would see me reading it as I was talking to the camera, and I don't think that's a very nice way for people to look at me. I wouldn't have put myself up on the screen if I had a script, because then it's just me reading from a page. It makes more sense for me to explain how I have used this. And I guess it helps. I've been creating these videos for over 10 years now, so I kind of have an internal cadence of how I want to get the information out to you. And it's more practice than it is reading from a script, I guess.
I've seen your YouTube video, 7-second subnetting, and I'm not smart enough to follow it. Is there any easier way?
There are easier ways. And as I mentioned in that video, this may not be the way for you, because there's a lot of different ways to do subnetting. And I even intentionally say at the beginning of the video, this is what I do. It's a complete departure from what other people will tell you how you should subnet. There's probably easier ways to do this with less writing and less charts and things. And I think one of the best ways, if you haven't seen it, is the chat room's going to have to tell me who does the Cisco books for the CCNA. Wendell Odom. So Wendell Odom, his style of subnetting is really good. He does a very good job of using, I think he calls it the magic number or the magic octet or something like that. That magic number format he uses is a good format as well. There's another way to do subnetting that uses a pie, like a pie chart. That's another good way to do it as well.
One more thing before I trouble you anymore, Professor Messer. You're one of the smartest guys I've ever listened to on the net, and I've been listening on the net now for 20 years. I have a challenge for you. The bad guys, whenever they can, they delete data. I hope you will put your mind to creating hardware in which data cannot be deleted.
Wouldn't that be nice? one of the challenges, first, thank you. I don't put myself into the category of the smartest people on the internet because I know much smarter people than I am are out there on the internet, but I appreciate it. We're just trying to do the best we can with the thing that we're trying to get across to people. And you also don't want me developing hardware. I used to work for a next generation firewall company. There were different parts of that organization. I was on the sales side. I was a systems engineer doing the technical sales type role where I would travel around. There were other people in the industry that were doing the software development and writing the code that would run on the firewall. Brilliant people and geniuses all around. And then there were a group of people that were building the hardware. These are people on the computer science side that are building the actual ASICs that were building the chips or the building off-the-shelf technologies that they were able to put together into some of these next-generation products. They were brilliant folks, and I look to them as people that really, really knew hardware. They dwarf my capabilities when it comes to hardware development. If I was to create a product where data couldn't be deleted, I guarantee you it wouldn't be a product that you'd be able to write the data to in the first place. So you're happier and much better off, trust me, that I'm not the one creating that.
Okay, one more question, then I'll let you go. I'm sorry for wasting your time. My son's sitting here in front of me. He's hooking up a Samsung 500 gig SSD to an older system, and he gets a 1 beep error message on boot up. What's the problem? Is that the hard drive not being recognized?
It could possibly be, but now it's up to whatever the manufacturer of the motherboard and the BIOS design that 1 beep to mean, and it means different things depending on the motherboard and the BIOS manufacturer. And it could very well be that it was something with the connection, or it could be that as you were installing the SSD that you knocked the memory out of place. Now the memory doesn't work, or it could be that you knocked the video. Well, you just don't know until you look at the beep codes for that particular manual. So, or that particular motherboard. So now it's a trip to the manual to figure out what does that 1 beep mean on this particular model of motherboard, and I bet it will point you in the right direction.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor.
Thanks, Randall. Take care.
Oh,
there he goes. There may have been something else there. We missed it. That's always something to wonder as you're trying to figure out what do we do next? Where do we go with this? Eventually, you have to read the manual. As painful as that is. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was installing a satellite dish for my parents because that's what IT people do, is you install the satellite dish. But of course, as you're aware, these satellite dishes, you have to get the right, you have to point the right direction. It has to be the right azimuth, and now they have to be at the right angle. So you've got sort of an X, Y, and a Z you have to deal with on these latest satellite dishes. And I was configuring the satellite dish, and it just didn't look right. Like I knew where I was. I used all the apps on my phone. I set it right, and I turned it. It just didn't look right, and I thought I'm not doing this right at all. But of course, did not read the manual. So as it turns out, the manual tells you when you're looking at this on the satellite dish, no, this is what you guide it by. Is this spot over here, not the one I was using? And of course, I set it the right way. We connected it up, and immediately it was right. But I had to read the manual. Why do we have to read the manual? That wasn't my idea. 760, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Dave. I'm calling from Helendale, California.
Welcome, Dave.
And I'm studying to take the Security Plus test.
Excellent.
And I have a question about the port numbers versus the functions.
Yeah.
In the old days, when I did component level troubleshooting many, many years ago, there was a way to memorize those color codes on resistors. So someone came up with some kind of sentence.
Right.
Until you actually lived it and you knew it then besides memorizing it. Is there any way that those port numbers, is there a trick, those port numbers to the functions, is there any trick to memorizing those things?
There are some tricks, and I should have captured this and saved it on CompTIA during this last week. Somebody posted their memorization that they use to memorize these port numbers, and I'm kind of scrolling through here in the hopes that I could find it very quickly, knowing full well that I'm not going to be able to. But if I do run across it again, I will tweet this out. but it was a really good overview of how they took each port number and how they applied it to what they knew and how they fit it in there. Some of us are kind of spoiled. We've sort of been doing this in IP for so long that sort of the port numbers have just become a normal part of what we've done. And I often forget that a lot of people are just seeing these port numbers for the first time. So there's no context. There's no muscle memory. There's no place where we ever plugged it into an app to make it work properly that would solidify it into our brain, that would make that synapse fire. But if somebody's able to find that, I think it was really in the last week or so on Reddit, would be the best way to get that. Let me look real quick. We'll do a quick check of this.
Because I compare this to, I used to do bodybuilding, and I got to a point after many years, I could look at a bar with the plates loaded and tell you exactly how many pounds on it without adding each plate up and the bar up.
Right.
And people say, how can you do that so fast? I go, I didn't add it. I look at it and I go, that's how much weight that is.
Yep.
You know?
It's almost a similar thing. It's like a muscle memory kind of thing where after a while you just remember, oh, it's SSL, it's 443. It's like you already know. It's just part of the normal thing. I remember my first phone number, that kind of thing. It's a similar situation, but you had to apply it. You had to use it in some way so that it would then stick in your head. And that's what this person did. He created this common way of bringing it back to something that was in his real world that he could then turn that around and spit it back out again on an exam. And it was really good. I searched on CompTIA and on the CompTIA subreddit, and I just searched for memorization, and I got a lot of different hits for people that are memorizing Network Plus, for example. So not all of them were the one. I can't find the exact one I was thinking of, but that may be a good resource for you.
Okay, good. Because until I slide into that function of Security Plus at my job, now I'm just trying to learn it and understand it for the test. And once I use it day to day, I'm sure it's going to be, secondhand. Just look at it and go, oh, that's that and that's this, But I'm new to this, so I'm trying to figure out how do I get this in my head, wrap my brain around it to go and put it on paper or on a computer once I go take the test. So
you are not the only one. This is a common issue, and I was so happy to see the person that wrote up his list, and it made perfect sense. Some of it was very funny, so it may be one of the best ways to find it is find someone who's done this already and kind of put that work in.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and all your efforts that you put out there on the internet.
Thanks, David. Take care. That's one of the things whenever I start trying to figure out how to make some of this easier. We've already done it with things like OSI, where we have all people seem to need data processing. Those are things that make sense to people. You can say it over and over again, and it's something very memorable. There's got to be an easier way to do this with some of the port numbers, and that what I saw on Reddit was a really good way to do it. I thought that was super way to do it. Well, we've gone into overtime. I think that's probably a good place to think about stopping what we're doing here. I want to thank everybody for joining us on the first hour of the study group. And thanks for sticking in for the after show. These questions are always good. You've always got something new. You've always got some great ideas, and I appreciate your participation. Thanks for being online. Thanks for your phone calls, and thanks for your support throughout the month. We really could not do this without you. I say it all the time, and we mean it all the time. Thanks very much for watching the videos, participating, sending me notes, and having that conversation. We really could not do this without you. Thanks for being here this time. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.